The Noble Queen, a Shadow Slave fanfic by Author NobleQueenBee, Chapter 451 to 475. Welcome, Professor Noble. B2 moved to one side to allow the room to get a better view of the master's arrival. I was just giving an overview of the expectations of the course. Thank you. Noble dipped her head toward the android. Her assistant hadn't even made a snarky remark this time about her untimely arrival. When the transition to the dream realm had first occurred, Noble's schedule had been shaky at best and unreliable at worst. Being pulled in so many directions, taking care of her family, establishing a Dreamer Academy, searching for skinwalkers, and also maintaining her teaching position at the Awakened Academy had proved a nearly impossible task. Her Awakened Academy courses had suffered the most from her overcommitment. But now, nearly 4 months after settling in Ravenheart, Noble had finally achieved a reasonable schedule, almost. She glanced up at the clock in the back of the room. Only 3 minutes past the hour. I've done much worse. Welcome to Memory Assessment and Utilization. For those who don't know me, I am Professor Noble. I see we have a good combination of new and familiar faces in here today, so I will mix things up a little. A chuckle off to one side caught her attention. She gave the student a sidelong glance. You have something to say, Sleeper Vel. The young person shifted, the smile on her face fading. No, ma'am. Only, I've just noted that when you say that, odds are that we better prepare ourselves for something wild to happen. A few others in the class nodded. The professor tilted one side of her mouth. I will try to be less predictable in the future. In their enthusiasm, Vel and a few others from Noble's Dreamer Academy had already set out and recently challenged their first nightmare. Thankfully all of them returned and were now students here in the waking world. It was weird to see them with aspects and memories now, but also somewhat fulfilling to know that all 4 had been successful. I'll have to get used to the idea of seeing people in both places. I want to keep a perfect record for as long as I can, or forever if possible. The professor clapped her hands. Let's play a little game. Summon a memory that you think would win a fight. Please don't mess up my classroom when you do. All around the room, sparks filled the space between students as over 100 memories wove into existence. Many were swords. Others were variations of axes, clubs as well as some bows and arrows. Only a few were entirely unconventional, seeming to provide no offensive advantage at all. Very interesting. Unfortunately, this is not combat class and so we won't be trying out our memories in real time. Noble watched the faces of her students. Some were relieved while others were very disappointed. Don't worry. I have a solution for our little thought exercise. B2 will select the enemy at random and we will judge from there who is the winner. Noble motioned toward the android, and a soft whirring sound filled the air. The enemy is a brain-eating worm that is 10 millimeters long and can move a meter in the blink of an eye. It has a particular love of earwax as an appetizer. What? A worm? Did it say earwax? What kind of enemy is that? The students groaned. It's an earwax-loving, brain-eating enemy. Noble answered the last question with a calm smile. And it seems some of you came very poorly equipped. The professor scanned the room. Anyone with a sword, axe, or bow is out. None of those would be able to cut something so small that moves so quickly. It would be in your ear in an instant. You can dismiss your memories. Grumbling, more than 3/4 of the room sent their items back in their soul sea. What about the other offensive weapons, B2? The android tapped its forehead. Running simulation. B2's eyes scanned the weapons in the room. Each of the clubs present would have a 1 in 725 chance of hitting, and that is being generous. The knife over there has an enchantment that looks like it's related to speed, so the odds there are 1 in 63. None of those are passing grades. Your earwax and then your brain would be worm food. You are out. Noble waved her hand. To be continued the investigation of the remaining items. Too slow, too unwieldy, too shiny. Just no, surely you were just trying to make Professor Noble laugh. One by one all of the offensive weapons were turned away by the sassy android, leaving only a few utility memories for the professor to peruse. Finally, 5 remained and were called to the front of the room. Why do you think a wrench would win? Noble raised an eyebrow at the sleeper. It's not just a wrench, it's a multi-tool. The young man demonstrated, changing its shape. If I can't throw a wrench at it, then maybe I can hammer it. What about you? Noble looked up at an exceptionally tall blonde wearing a magical belt. The pocket of this belt can contain almost anything. At worst, I would starve it to death. The next two, a pen and a pair of boots, were both defended by their owners. This stylus can create a facsimile of anything that I can draw, within reason. All I would need to do is draw a defensive cone around myself and then draw a fork to skewer it. These boots float above the landscape. The worm can't fly, so it cannot attack me. Very interesting. Noble noted the creativity of both sleepers' thoughts. The final item was a helmet with a translucent visor. It was held by a girl in a blue scarf. Tell me about your memory. Noble invited. This helmet would protect my head, which is the most important weapon an awakened can have. The visor has an enchantment that guides my eyes toward weak points in things that threaten me. So I would do my best to determine the weak point, stay out of its way, and then summon the right memory to kill it. You would summon another memory. Noble arched her brow. The girl nodded. You said to summon a memory to help me win. This memory is it. I wouldn't know what weapon to choose without it. Noble hummed softly. B2, can you calculate the input from the sleepers and decide who has won our contest? With a scoff, the android placed one hand on its alloy hip. Of course I can. The room grew silent, waiting for the answer. B2 seemed to enjoy the suspense, if such a thing could be said of an android, so the moment of reckoning was drawn out far longer than needed. At last, the assistant printed a paper and handed it to the professor. Nodding to B2, Noble looked at the page. A small smile came to her face as she looked up at the students. I guess I like a little drama too. Faced with a tiny brain-eating worm that has a sweet tooth for earwax, the winner is Sleeper Vel. Noble smiled at the girl as the student held out her helmet proudly. B2 nodded. The helmet would have been the best memory to use in a fight against the worm. The wrench was a close second. However, dodging a worm while actively switching the nature of the tool is risky for one's earwax. Third is the belt. Its main deficiency was that it did not provide a clear method of how to get the worm into its pocket. The pen would be fourth. Although with the worm's speed, it is unlikely that the barrier would be drawn in time, there is a possibility that success could be achieved. And the boots would provide a method of escape, but since they can never touch the ground, they would never be able to attack. Not the best enchantment for this scenario. At best it would be a stalemate. Noble scrunched her nose at B2. Floating has its uses, but I agree that doing it without being able to land is a drawback. You explained why the others were rated as second through fifth, but why did Vel get first? B2 motioned to the memory in question. Sleeper Vel's helmet would give her valuable information on how to move forward in defeating the tiny worm. And although that is a great advantage, the bigger one is that it protects her head. The worm would have to get through the helmet to reach her ears. While all 5 of these students would likely survive the encounter, Vel's chance of success is 95%. Well done, Vel. Noble led the class in a round of applause as she dismissed the group to their seats. One student, who Noble recognized as a legacy, raised her hand. She could tell by her emotions that she was displeased. Professor Noble, how is that fair? If we had known there would be a specific enemy, we would have selected differently. Noble pursed her lips. Did you ask? The legacy looked down. No. Did you make any attempt to research? As the second question was rhetorical, Noble continued with her lesson. I get how tempting it is to show off your most impressive and devastating weapon. But not every enemy will respond to physical might in the same way. Knowledge is power, and while you don't always have the luxury to study and research, today you did. Noble motioned to the girl in the blue scarf. Vel chose the memory that she thought would be the most versatile, and she was willing to expand upon my initial premise to ensure her victory. And, in part, she got lucky that the creature went for the ears. Noble winked at the girl. I weighed the odds, Vel corrected her teacher with a grin. And knowing my teacher, I picked accordingly. That's cheating. The legacy objected. I would argue that she used all her resources, as any awakened should during a struggle for survival. Noble found it funny that the legacy was so invested in a competition that had no prize. Competitive nature runs deep in many of the clans, she reminded herself. I'm sure most of you would have selected differently if you had known the ultimate objective. And that is part of the point. In a situation where you are attacked, you will have more information about your opponent, but around the same amount of time, or less, to react. Know your memories and their capabilities as well as you know your own limitations. Then the next time something wants to snack on you, you'll be ready. Some were still skeptical but many nodded, at least pretending to understand her point. Now that you know your enemy, please bring any memory you have that you think may beat it. If you don't have anything, this might be a good time to think of a strategy that would be good for dealing with small, fast creatures in the future. They are more common than you might think. The next round brought new memories for B2 to scan. Many more passed the exercise on the second pass. Some swelled with pride that they had accomplished the goal. A small mountain of synthetic pages formed on Noble's desk, growing with each scan. Today was going to push her printer to the limit. B2 kept going without pause. Noble wasn't sure that any computing problem would be able to stop the determined android. The assistant was scanning fast enough to strain the other equipment, so eventually Noble moved on to a less data-heavy topic. By the time class had finished, it was well into the lunch hour. Her own growling stomach had alerted Noble to the fact that she should end her session while she was ahead. The students filed out, many discussing what memories they wished they possessed while others bragged about their arsenal. The girl in a blue scarf took a little extra time collecting her things. Allow me, Noble used her ability to lift all the supplies and tuck them into Vel's bag. Thank you and thanks for the great class, Professor. The lovely girl chirped as she slung her bag on her shoulder. You are most welcome, Noble smiled, and congratulations on completing your first nightmare. I know how much you wanted to conquer it. Vel's smile faltered. It wasn't what I expected, but I know I succeeded partially due to your influence. That's why I'm coming to as many of your courses as I can before the solstice. That's months away, yet. Make sure to pace yourself. Noble had seen sleepers be very enthusiastic and then burn out around the time they really needed to focus. I'll be careful, the girl promised. And my parents might try to pay to have me transported to the dream realm before the solstice to awaken without risk. Do you think that would even work? Noble nodded. It should. Then I can relax and go to whatever classes I like, including all of yours. The young woman was delighted by the prospect. That sounds nice. The crucible that was the winter solstice would still be suffered by most, but knowing Vel might avoid it was a weight off of Noble's mind. I will see you around then. You will, Vel promised, then paused. She glanced nervously at B2. Professor Noble, could we speak privately? The master looked at her assistant. The android was wholly uninterested in the human conversation, gathering together the findings of the day and organizing them. B2, can we have a moment to talk? Noble asked politely. Of course, I have no control over your speaking ability, but I suppose you mean you want to do it without my presence. B2 rolled robotic eyes toward the ceiling. I will be in my alcove when you need me. The android let out a robotic sound resembling a huff and set the papers aside. Then, with more attitude than any android had the right to have, B2 shut the panel of the hideaway. Don't mind B2. That's all bark and no bite unless you try to open the back panel and do maintenance work. Noble chuckled. Now what were you wanting to say? Vel sighed. It's about rain. Noble's eyes opened wide. When had Vel conquered the nightmare? She wouldn't have seen rain in at least a couple of weeks. What about rain? Vel chewed her lip. Do you know if she plans to take on the first trial soon? The professor furrowed her brow. I don't believe so. Why? Running her fingers along her blue scarf, the girl formed her words. I don't know why, but I think she might be planning to go without telling you. I stumbled across her training a few times. She was talking to herself. Then when Soup arrived at the Awakened Academy yesterday, we got to talking. Soup said she had been going out past the city walls by herself. She's developing a bit of a nickname because of it. A nickname. Noble tilted her head, inviting the student to continue. Not Soup, of course, but others are beginning to call her the crazy girl. Vel winced. Either way, I just thought you would want to know. Thank you, Vel. I will look into it, Noble nodded. Have a wonderful lunch. You too, Professor. And thanks again. Waving goodbye to Vel, Noble only let her smile fade when the door shut at last. Humans go crazy all the time. A voice from the alcove broke the silence. Why are people so surprised when it happens? First of all, you weren't supposed to be listening. Second of all, humans do not go crazy all the time. We may be illogical by android standards, but that is not the same as going insane. Noble pressed her lips together. So then crazy would be an insult. Are you upset about your daughter being insulted? Opening the hatch, B2 made a cracking sound with its alloy knuckles. I read how humans take care of those who are insulted, and I would help with any removal of kneecaps. Whoa, what have you been reading? No, I don't want to know. Noble covered her eyes, embarrassed. It was meant as an insult, but I won't go after anyone for being unkind. They just don't understand what Rain is doing. Maybe they will understand someday. Noble didn't realize that people outside of her family had picked up on Rain's unorthodox behavior. The teen kept mostly to herself other than a few academic courses to finish off her education. Yet, she had drawn at least some attention from her peers. What is she doing that they don't understand? B2 asked. The professor blew out her cheeks. Nothing much. Just trying to change the way humanity survives and possibly alter its course forever. B2 looked at Noble strangely. That doesn't sound like nothing to me. Noble smiled softly. No, I suppose it doesn't. It would amount to nothing unless Rain succeeded though, or at least found a path forward. Noble hoped and dreaded what that would look like if she accomplished what no one had in their world's history. Noble would deal with it if the time came. For now, Rain would be labeled weird unless she found a better way to hide her eccentricities. Not that I'm normal. Noble shrugged. People just gave more leniency to those with power. With a sigh, the professor looked at the mountain of papers that had formed on her desk. If only she had the ability to make it all be done with a snap. That will take me a couple of days to sift through properly, she mumbled. I can do it, B2 pointed out, grabbing a handful of papers. I had it compiled all before class was over. Thank you. I still want my eyes to look over them. I won't feel like I'm doing my job otherwise. Anyway, I have another task for you. I need you to help me select the location for the Dreamer Academy. I've narrowed it down too. You can discard whatever choices you had in mind. B2 brushed back synthetic hair. I already selected the best location. All you need to do is let the government know so they can begin construction. Is that so? The professor blinked. She hadn't even given the robot any of the information of her requirements. B2 nodded. It is easy. Based on the available maps of Ravenheart, the android projected an image into the air. Here is the ideal spot for your school. The spot that 2B pointed to was close to the wall. Why there? Noble studied the map carefully. It is far enough from the current settlement that it will give your school room to grow, but still close enough to get reinforcements if anything should go wrong. The terrain will provide a variety of arena options, and if you want to expand your classes into things like nightmare creature anatomy, you are less likely to have people complain about you bringing dead abominations into Ravenheart if they aren't being dragged through town. I see. Noble hadn't remembered telling B2 about her future classes, but that option had been on her mind very recently. More than that, my projection on the future of Ravenheart puts that land as prime real estate in the future. Barring a catastrophic event, that land will be some of the most valuable as the city continues to expand. Meaning that the government could stand to have a valuable asset in the future. Noble mused. It wasn't her money being used to make all of this happen. She wanted to be wise with the investment that she was entrusted with. There is one thing you forgot when mentioning the details about this place, Noble grinned. The android whirred for a moment. Do you mean the hot spring nearby or the proposed clinic? No, though I'm curious how you know about that second detail. Noble raised her eyebrows. Not important. The android flicked its wrist dismissively. Perhaps you mean the natural cave on the edge of the property that would be perfect for survivalist practice and shelter construction. That wasn't what I meant, no. Noble shook her head. You will never be downwind from the lower town. B2 tapped a synthetic nose. I'm not sure that is something you can promise in the dream realm, but that was something I took into consideration, Noble smirked. The proximity to the android stopped as the professor shook her head. What about the geothermal? B2 received another negative gesture. The soil composition. The professor laughed. Let me guess, you found someone to get you a sample. Naturally. I know everything there is to know about the spot. Not everything, Noble couldn't hide her mirth. The android looked on the verge of short-circuiting. What is the point that I could possibly be missing? You are many things, B2, but you are not a mind reader, Noble told her assistant seriously. What you did not know is that the location you chose was already on my final list of locations. In fact, it was my top choice. So you confirmed the selection I was already going to make. Oh, then you chose well, Professor Noble. The android responded lamely. We chose well, B2. I appreciate the help, though I could do with a little less sass when you provide it. Don't blame me for that, the assistant pointed to its abdomen. You are the one who helped program me. That's true, Noble tapped her chin. Maybe I should open your back panel and... Don't you dare. As amusing as it was to tease her assistant, how often did she get to feel smarter than a machine with access to nearly infinite data? Noble still had many things to do before heading home. Having the location information transferred to her datapad, Noble gathered up her things. If you can organize the memories by type, that will expedite my work when I get back from government headquarters. Noble would at least look for any uncommon types before heading back to Dream Realm. You are coming back. B2's question caught the professor off guard. But then Noble understood. I don't expect to get any urgent communications today that will send me to the Dream Realm before the end of the day. Do you ever expect them? The android asked pointedly. No, the professor tilted up her chin, but today I really don't expect any news. Safe journey, then. B2 sat down at the professor's desk. I will file these and send you any more information about the location you have selected. Thank you, B2. Before heading toward government headquarters, Noble felt for the emotional signature of her mentor. Given the hour, he was unsurprisingly in the cafeteria. Good. I am hungry too. The professor patted her grumbling belly and headed out. The old man's face lit up when he saw Noble enter the staff's lunchroom. There's my girl. I came by earlier but you were having class. How are things? Julius welcomed his stepdaughter as she joined him with a tray of food. Busy. I have to eat quickly and go to government headquarters to drop a few things off. Noble set down her food and gave the man a huge hug. Julius nodded and returned to his seat. You sound just like your mother. So much work in so little time. She isn't neglecting you, is she? Noble furrowed her brow. Goodness, no. Lena may not be awakened, but she still has the superpower to do so much and make it look easy. Julius chuckled softly. I believe it. I guess Mom is doing well, then. Noble liked seeing Julius so happy when he mentioned her mother. She is in her element. She has met this girl named Beth. At times I feel like I'm looking at a younger copy of Lena. Beth thinks she can bring electricity to Bastion, and your mom is doing all she can to get the right resources for research to progress. That's wonderful. Noble's heart bloomed with pride for her mother. Speaking of which, I have a letter. Julius summoned a memory. Having no need of the keepsake with her new ability, Sarai had gifted the memory to Julius for him to use. The small box was used to bring letters to Anne from the Dream Realm on behalf of Julius's precious wife. He handed the pages to Noble while she called on a memory of her own. Below the government papers, Noble had stowed a message from herself as well as notes from the kids. The exchange took barely a moment, but it was worth more than gold to everyone involved. Slipping Lena's note into the box, Noble shut the lid. I will read it with the children and Fort later. It's fun to have their reactions mingle with my own. It feels more like she's there, you mean. Julius touched his temple. Lena likes reading your notes aloud for the same reason. She misses you dearly. We miss her too. Especially me. Noble had always had her mother to lean on, so these past few months had felt like years without her. The letters were a small way to make the distance more bearable. Noble comforted herself that people had used written communication to keep in touch since before the Dark Ages. She wasn't the first to suffer a separation like this, and she wouldn't be the last. Hopefully, in the future, they will be reunited. The two teachers had a lovely, but all too brief lunch before Noble needed to continue with her day. The floating woman put her tray on the conveyor belt to be ushered away. I need to go. Tell Mom I love her, Noble smiled sadly. I will, though I'm sure you said so in your letter also. Julius nodded and hugged the girl once more. She loves you too. Meet again next week. Yes. I'll find you, don't worry. Noble touched her heart with her hand. You always do, Julius chuckled. Be safe until then. Reluctantly, Noble left her stepfather behind and went about the rest of her day. She needed to get going. Her meeting with her funding coordinator was in about an hour. Acquiring the land in Ravenheart was a bit convoluted. Since it was going to be government property within the limits of a great clan's citadel, an agreement with both parties would need to be drawn up. Politics was a delicate business, even when both parties would benefit from the deal. Money, some form of bartering, or both would need to exchange hands for the purchase to be binding. Noble wanted everything to be legal so she wouldn't find herself in hot water later on. Using the time on the train, Noble made sure all the paperwork was in order. The meeting was mostly a formality anyway. Noble was so anxious to get things moving that she nearly missed her stop. Not even Praised cryptic words about a lost stranger distracted her from moving beyond the gate into the building where her husband used to work. Moving past her father's statue, Noble paused briefly to look up at the handsome man who had spent half her life as only a memory. This is your fault, you know, Noble cracked a small smile. You married an unstoppable woman and gave birth to a daughter who can't sit still. Now I'm working at not one, but two academies in two different worlds. Oh, and I'm a courier for the government. That last part is not exactly a career move I planned on making, but it's honest work. And you remember what you used to say about that. The statue, as usual, did not respond, but that didn't stop Noble. A day of honest work is better than a year of dishonest living. I think I might live forever at this point. Oh, Mom is doing well, Fort is a splendid ambassador and the kids are thriving. I think you would be proud. At least I hope so. At the approach of an agent, Noble cut off her rambling. Talking to herself was one thing, but she didn't want anyone to think she had snapped and call security. That would be fun to explain. So rather than risk an incident, Noble left the garden after blowing her father's statue a kiss. In her head, he smiled in return. It took a few minutes for Noble to drop off Fort's papers and get his new orders, but the exchange was overall very brief. Fort should get an awakened assistant soon to do this instead of me. While she didn't mind running the errand, it was a lot of time out of her day to travel back and forth. At least today she had business at government headquarters, more than she realized. The packet of papers that Noble received was sealed as it always was. Noble found it amusing because no one would be able to unseal the papers when they were in the memory located in her soul sea. And if she unsealed them, would her husband tell on her? Probably not. Even if he did, the government would just find a new courier. That's actually a reason to open it even if I don't read what's inside, she chuckled to herself. Thank you. Noble took the communication and put them with the note from her mother. Then she dismissed both precious messages to be transported with her. Her next stop was 2 floors down. At least it was in the same building. Noble would add the written approval or preliminary contract to her memory and be on her way. That would be enough to give to Clan Song to set up a meeting to finalize everything. There was only one problem. You cannot have that location. The man behind the desk didn't blink when he spoke. Zeth had been very serious the last time they met about this subject, so had no reason to believe he was joking. Why not? Noble found her voice after a moment of shock. It is not within the government's budget. The clerk folded his hands on the desk. Is there anything I can do? If the gap is small, then I might be able to use other funding in this project to cover the deficit. Noble hoped it was a small rounding error. That would be a misappropriation of funding. Zeth shook his head. I can put in my own money. The professor watched the man's expression sour. The government agent frowned. That would make you part owner in a government facility. And that is against regulations. Noble filled in the blank. I see. It had taken her months to pick the location. What B2 had said was true, it was the perfect spot. Why wasn't I told this when I began my search? I was led to believe I could have any place that wasn't already claimed. While there had been a budget, it had been so large that Noble hadn't considered that she might go over it. I don't know what to tell you. When I submitted the location to Song, they came back with a price. I negotiated as much as my job would allow, but it is better if you pick another place. The clerk shrugged. It was tempting to throw a fit, call the chancellor, or do a number of things to get her way, but it all seemed very childish. After all, if the government could negotiate with Clan Song, then there was a bit of wiggle room. Noble just had to be creative. You have a fund for those who want an advance on their salary. If instead of giving money directly to me, you put it in the funds for this property, then can we make the two ends meet? Noble did extra jobs for the government all the time, including the courier position she was currently handling for Fort. It might take her a little time and a few odd favors, but she would repay the debt in no time. Zeth ran his fingers through his curly hair. Let me get this straight. You want to pay the government to work for them so that that funding will be added to the property acquisition budget. That is highly unorthodox. But can it be done? Noble held her breath. I would have to check, but I think so. The man clicked away at his data pad. Great. Get the documents drawn up. Noble clapped her hands. It hadn't been ideal, but there were worse ways to settle an issue than a little unpaid overtime. The agent looked at her incredulously. I will move forward once I get permission. If you have clout with Clan Song, I recommend that you try to get any concessions from them that you can. I will do that, thank you. While she would love to wait while he ironed out the details, she needed to get back to B2 and then home to make dinner. Time was slipping away like sand. I can pick everything up on Friday when I come again. I'll see you then, Master Noble. But remember what I said. You don't want to owe more than you have to. Zeth pushed up his glasses to punctuate his point. I understand. Thank you. Noble shook the man's hand before running from the room. Something was finally off of her long to-do list. She would look at all the details of the contract later, of course, but for now, she would push the issue aside for the next one. So many balls in the air in so little time. Was this how a circus clown felt? No, a clown would have more sense than to take on so many projects. Waiting for the elevator, Noble tried to prioritize what she could realistically finish with what was left of her day. When the elevator opened to receive her, she only barely registered what was being said before a familiar face came into view. He was speaking to a young woman in a gray suit in a hushed tone. I still cannot believe he is gone. Oh hello, Master Noble. Venster scooted back to make room for the newcomer. It's good to see you. Noble let the rest of her thoughts leave her head as she greeted her old friend. It has been too long. Indeed it has. How was the move to Ravenheart? Seamless, I hope. The congenial awakened smiled. Seamless isn't the word I would use. Noble thought about her particularly rough first day in the Citadel, but overall I think we are adjusting well. I have opened a Dreamer Academy to assist those who wish to become awakened. So I heard. Venster nodded knowingly. It is quite the undertaking, but the boss thinks you are doing splendidly. Noble was happy to hear that her work was being well received, but their ride down was short and Noble did not want to waste it on self-praise. How is Crestfall? The professor was keenly interested in her former second home. Emptier without you, but still thriving. The wall is complete and Hamish and Catfine are wonderful stewards whenever St. Jet is away. Venster's enthusiasm warmed Noble's heart. I'm so glad. Crestfall will always have a part of my heart. The door opened and the woman in the gray suit excused herself, but not before patting Venster on the arm. You two enjoy catching up, but don't forget about me, Venster. I want to hear every detail about what happened very soon. I'm sure you will find me the first chance you get to pump me for information." Venster waved to the woman as she left. The door shut and Noble looked at the Chancellor's assistant with a question clearly written on her face. "What was that about?" "Ah, I suppose you haven't heard the news yet. Why would you? I doubt you even knew the man." "Man." Noble furrowed her brow as she tried to remember what Venster had said when she was getting on the elevator. "Someone is gone." Venster pursed his lips as he shook his head. "Not just gone. Dead. His name was Master Yash. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description." Master Yash. The name sent every manner of feeling through Noble, but she worked to keep her face neutral. "What do you mean?" Venster shrugged. "I am sure you have access to the communication also since you are a government liaison. A warning was issued about a new nightmare creature in the waking world. They are calling it a skinwalker." The professor tried to look suitably surprised. "You mentioned something about Master Yash." "Ah, yes. It seems he was the first one taken. Saint Jet hunted him down, or what was left of him. She found him just 2 days ago. It's all anyone can talk about around here." The elevator dinged on one of the lower floors and Venstedt tipped his invisible hat. "This is my stop, but you can check it out for yourself." "It was good to see you, Noble." "Good to see you too. We will have to catch up more very soon." Noble bid her friend goodbye as the doors shut. Fishing out her communicator, Noble used her access through the academy to look up the message in question. It only took a moment to find. As Noble glided across the government compound toward the exit, she read what the message had to say. Which wasn't much. As she suspected, much of the document was redacted, or so she assumed by the choppy nature of what was still there. What was left behind was a brief on a new nightmare creature called a skinwalker. Noble knew that Jet had been tracking the lost master, but it seemed he had gone to the far east of Australia instead of the west as he originally indicated. Yash had been residing for months in one of the minor human settlements on the Australian coast when Jet tracked him down. Even without being directly mentioned in the text, Noble knew how catastrophic that meeting would have been. She wondered how much of the port and city was ruined by that kind of brawl. All that was said was that the threat had been neutralized. Forever. Or just for now. Noble knew by the final words that it was the latter. If anyone around you seems to be behaving abnormally, please submit a report immediately. This is an ongoing investigation. Noble mumbled the words as she spoke. She remembered the woman that she had sensed the day that Fort had decided they were moving to the dream realm. The professor had reported her to Saint Cor when they spoke, but her description had been vague at best. Had they caught her? Doing a quick sweep, Noble didn't find any skinwalkers within the government compound at that particular moment. She extended her reach as far as it would go. It was overwhelming to have so many emotions assaulting her consciousness, but Noble needed to know. Lives depended on it. Her essence drained until she was sure the area was clear, then retracted her sense to its more natural radius. Will they make a more general announcement to the public? Noble doubted it, at least for now. Until they found a good way to stop the spread, there wasn't much that could be done that wouldn't cause mass panic. Think of the number of reports then. There would be enough of that inside the government as it was. Trying to field requests from millions of additional people would be impossible. The reporters will catch wind of this if they haven't already. At least Ravenheart has set up a system to make sure none of them enter through the gates. Even with that bit of comfort, Noble suddenly felt a strong urge to go home and check on her loved ones. The temptation to pull on her tether was a strong one, but she needed to finish her workday first. Thankfully there wasn't much left of the day, and so she rushed through it as reasonably as she could. Something deep in her was stirred and she couldn't shake it. Something just felt off. Although the feeling came around the same time as the skinwalker, Noble could quite write the emotion off as being related. And that worried her more than if it were just her regular paranoia. Even when she arrived at the academy, her mind was split between her work and her worry. Finally, the professor could not stand her sense of foreboding any longer. B2, I'm heading home, she informed her assistant as she finished filing a page. I will see you again on Friday. She pulled on her tether, missing whatever sarcastic retort the android might have made. As soon as the Jade Palace materialized before her eyes, Noble left the gateway behind and rushed to the bridge. Searching her soul sea, Noble could feel her attribute was in a strange state. It pulled her as it had in the battle for Crestfall, but the tug was so tenuous that it was more of an ache in her gut than a clear direction. Home. She needed to get home. Whatever was happening could be narrowed down as soon as Noble made it to her house. Coming into the lovely cottage after tearing across the bridge, Noble found her sons and husband in the living area. The two boys were playing some sort of board game while Fort hadn't even put down the satchel on his shoulders after returning from his duties. Mom, you're back. The boys looked up from their game long enough to greet their mother. Fort looked at her with mild surprise. You are home early. Did something happen? His question was answered with a passionate kiss as Noble wrapped her arms around her husband's neck. We are right here. Brock pretended to gag. Gross. Blaze picked up the dice and took his turn casually. We should be glad they are kissing and still like each other. Weren't you the one who said you wanted a baby brother or sister? I told you that in confidence. Brock looked ready to punch his younger brother. Noble felt her ears burn as Fort coughed and pulled away. I need to have a serious conversation with you boys if you think kissing causes babies, he deflected. Then he turned back to his wife. Is anything wrong? I guess not. I'm just glad you all are okay. I had this weird premonition. I thought maybe someone really had fallen in the volcano. Brock tried. Blaze stuck out his tongue. It was a joke. Brock crossed his arms. That's enough, boys. Noble could see the twins had experienced a little too much together time for the day. Tell me something good about the trip. Rain helped me collect some cool samples that I can study later, Blaze bragged on his older sister. She also helped me figure out how close I could get before my face might melt off. I didn't try it because you asked me not to, though. Brock nodded emphatically. I'm glad your sister was a decent chaperone then. Where is she now? Fort hung his bag by the door. She went on with her mysterious plans. I assume she will be home soon. Noble felt a tug at her core when Fort said those words. She felt for her daughter. Rain was in her sphere of influence and alive. That was good. Oblivious to her thoughts, Fort continued. Do you have documents for me from the waking world? What? Oh yes. And a note from Grandma that I will read aloud over dinner. Noble summoned the box of papers and gave the sealed packet to Fort. He opened it and thumbed through the pages quickly. His expression darkened. Yosh. I know, Noble told him. I read the revised report, but I'm guessing you have a more complete picture. I would love to read it later if you'll let me. That is after we say hello to Rain. Hello, Rain. The woman heard the door open and called over her shoulders. Blood. Blaze called out suddenly, drawing the mother's attention. You are bleeding. Noble studied her son. Had he cut his finger on the board game or the dice? Not me, Blaze shuddered. That is when the scent hit Noble's nostrils and she spun on her heels. Blaze wasn't covered in blood. But Rain was. Rain. Noble's eyes opened wide. Where are you hurt? Fort was already at the door examining his daughter before his wife could fully turn around. She joined her husband, pulling Rain gently into the room before shutting the door behind her. I'm fine, mostly, Rain groaned as Fort found a tender spot on her shoulder. Most of the blood isn't mine, at least I don't think it is. The girl looked down at her clothing and winced. Did you kill someone? Brock's mouth hung open as he peeked over the back of the couch. Rain smiled at him, not someone. Something. The words only cemented the worry in Noble's heart. Brock, Blaze, go clean up any blood that might be out front. We don't want to attract any unwanted attention. The boys started to object, but a stern look from their father told them that they should obey. Reluctantly, they donned their summer coats and headed outside. The door shut, and Fort could handle it no longer. Were you attacked? Not exactly. At least not at first. Rain winced again as Noble helped her slide her jacket off of her body. Pulling back the shirt from the girl's shoulder, Noble noted the bruising. Are those teeth marks? Looking at the jacket, Noble noticed the thick lining. It was also unusually heavy. Had Rain made her own makeshift armor? Fort's face darkened as he saw the injury. What do you mean not exactly? I hunted down a nightmare creature. I found it. And then it found me. Rain motioned to her shoulder. You went on a hunt for a nightmare creature, alone. Fort's measured cadence was all that was keeping him from exploding. I know how it sounds. Rain tried to defend herself, raising her arm and then groaning with the effort. It sounds like you completely ignored your promise to not do anything dangerous. The ambassador gritted his teeth. Noble looked at the window and glared at the shadow she knew was hiding there. Then she sighed. Let's get you changed and cleaned up while you tell us about it, the mother said gently before her husband could let loose the emotion bubbling in his soul. Can you bring a filled washbasin upstairs in a moment, please, dear? Fort grunted but agreed. The two ladies walked up the stairs, Noble doing her best to support her daughter as she went. You went outside the walls again, didn't you? The mother furrowed her brow. How did you? Rain hadn't mentioned that detail on purpose. I know much more than you think, but I didn't think saying that in front of your father was wise, Noble pursed. I see, Rain nodded slowly. Once in her room, the teen was able to change into fresh clothes with some assistance. Noble noted the scratches on the girl's hand and face. Although Rain tried to do it covertly, Noble saw the knife that was slipped between the bed and end table when Noble turned to place the stained clothes in a pile. Must have been some battle, Noble noted as calmly as she could. Rain was safe now and that was all that mattered, Noble reminded herself. The neutral tone worked. Rain's face relaxed even as she allowed Noble to take a better look at her injured shoulder. It didn't go as expected, the teen admitted, but everything turned out all right in the end. That last part is good to know. I will be interested to know the rest as well. As hard as it would be to hear, Noble wanted every detail that the girl would give. This bruise is gnarly, but it isn't bleeding. We may want to check in with a doctor, but I think it may heal on its own. I think it will be fine. I don't want to bother a doctor if there is nothing they can do. Noble hummed softly. Listen, Rainy. A knock at the door interrupted the incoming talk. I have the water. Fort's voice was strained. Come in, Noble answered pleasantly, opening the door using her aspect. The doting father tiptoed into the room with a bowl in his hand. He relaxed slightly at seeing Rain wearing untorn clothes but tensed once more when he noticed the bloodied ones still on the ground. Noble followed his eyes and nodded. Good idea. I will go set those to soak immediately and see later what can be mended. I'll return in a moment. Noble hurried down the stairs and put the bloody clothing in their washtub. Already she could feel the tensions mounting upstairs when the boys came back inside. We cleared what we could from the sidewalk, Blaze announced. Now is someone going to explain why Rain came in looking like a zombie? I don't have the story yet, myself, Noble brushed aside the comment. Now you boys can finish your game or your homework. Actually, can one of you start boiling noodles for dinner? I think this conversation will last a while, and I don't want us all to starve because of it. I got it, Mom, Brock answered with a nod. I'll clean up our game, Blaze sighed. Perhaps it was Noble's mood that had a calming effect on her boys, but she was pleasantly surprised with their maturity. They would likely interrogate their sister later, but for now, they would bide their time. That was good because the storm brewing upstairs could wait no longer. Thanks, boys. I appreciate you. Noble filled 2 cups of water and gripped them tightly. Rather than fake her steps, Noble flew up the stairs and turned down the hall. Voices were being raised. What were you doing outside the walls of Ravenheart? Fort was on the verge of hysteria. Just what I said, hunting. I told you I wanted to get stronger. Rain spoke through gritted teeth. Fort scoffed. I thought that meant meditation and sparring, not going into the countryside. At some point, this was going to happen. Fort pulled at his hair. You promised that you wouldn't do anything dangerous before you turned 18, remember? Maybe you and I have different definitions of dangerous. I came out fine, didn't I? Rain crossed her arms and whimpered. Fine, fine, you call all that fine? The vein on Fort's neck looked ready to burst. Noble held out the cup to her husband and daughter. Good. You got mostly cleaned up, I see, Rainy. Let's have some refreshments. I'm not thirsty. Fort had the glass forced into his hand. Drink anyway, Noble insisted with a stern glare. Rain took the cup and both drank deeply per their matriarch's request. Noble filled the silence. I hope I didn't miss too much while I was downstairs. I cannot wait to hear all about your adventure this afternoon, Rain. We are going to listen quietly until you are done explaining and then ask our questions in a calm and concise manner. Noble cut her eyes to her husband. He lowered his empty cup with a scowl but wisely remained silent. If he wanted to hear what his daughter had to say, silence was his best option. Noble hovered over the bed and patted beside her for Rain to join her. Fort grabbed the desk chair to round out the group. Noble gave her husband one more knowing glance before taking their daughter's hand. Now, what happened today? Rain sighed. I assume you mean after the field trip. Very well. Here goes. Dropping the boys back at the house, Rain left her brothers playing a board game. They were old enough to fend for themselves, as long as there wasn't an active volcano involved. The wall was a long way from her home, but Rain had found the most efficient way to get to her goal without being too noticeable. That wasn't to say no one noticed. The guards at the edge of the city gave her the same strange look they always did before letting her pass. Be back before dark, miss, one reminded her. She waved at him in thanks, trying not to betray the nervousness she felt. Rain pulled her jacket tightly around her and hurried down the hillside until she was out of their sight. She glanced at her shadow. What now, teacher? A voice from the darkness answered her. First, stop looking like you have just committed a crime. You are just going to hunt down a nightmare creature. Why are you feeling guilty? Rain puckered her lips. I'm not feeling guilty. I'm just anxious to get started. Good. Her teacher manifested next to her, something she had grown accustomed to in the past few months. He was as dark and mysterious as ever, and just now he had a determined expression on his face. Did you make all the preparations? The teen nodded. I lined my clothes with the toughest material I could find. It's heavy, but I can still move. And, the dark deity raised his eyebrows. Rain reached into her jacket and pulled out a dagger. Its sharp tip shimmered in the afternoon sun. I got one like you asked, but I don't see why I can't just shoot it. You can try, the teacher told her, the corner of his mouth turning upward, but it doesn't hurt to be prepared. I'm almost ready. Rain tucked the dagger back into her jacket. I just need to get my bow. Reaching into a hidey hole that she had carved out of the rock, Rain retrieved her weapon of choice as well as a quiver. Her father had gotten her the sturdy bow just over a month ago for her birthday, but she doubted he would approve of her using it for this particular purpose. Rain winced. I need to get stronger and this is the way to do it, she reminded herself. Her father would understand in time, hopefully. Slinging the mundane arrows over her shoulder, Rain could barely contain her bubbling excitement. Rubbing some dirt on her face and body to hide her scent, she turned expectantly to her teacher. Which way? The teacher shrugged. This is your hunt. Thanks for that, Rain glared at her teacher. He could have at least given me a general area or a hint for what we are seeking. The shadowy figure chuckled. Don't look at your teacher that way. Use what you have been taught. Track, observe, and make a plan to defeat it. Today is about honing skills. And no, one of those skills is not trying to bore a hole through my skull with your eyes. Rain looked away, embarrassed that he had read her thoughts. She would show him. Looking at the terrain, Rain tried to guess the most likely path that an abomination might take. Are we looking for any of the creatures on the bounty board? She asked, hoping to narrow her search slightly. No, anything dangerous enough to end up on that board is too far above your ability. The creature we are tracking was specifically selected for your current skill level. While Rain was a little relieved to hear that, she was also offended. He didn't have to say it so condescendingly. The girl clicked her tongue. So, you really aren't going to give me even a starting point. What kind of teacher are you? The dark deity gave her a strange look. After a moment, he shrugged. I like to think of myself as the best teacher in two worlds, but if that doesn't suit you, perhaps you should think of me as a big brother instead. The shadowy figure glanced at Rain. Big brother. Was it her imagination or was there extra meaning behind his words? The teacher smiled lazily. Of course, didn't I tell you I was your older brother? Maybe I should start calling you little sister. Rain rolled her eyes. Haha, very funny. Why was her teacher so insufferable? As if she could be related to someone who was so powerful and ancient. The dark deity pointed. In the spirit of familial harmony, your big brother will give you the first clue. The creature went that way. Well, that is something. Rain adjusted her coat and looked in the direction her teacher indicated. Almost immediately she spotted a strange pattern in the ground. The snow was disturbed. That isn't from me. The rhythmic marks were unlikely to be caused by the wind or the volcanic ash, which meant that something living had caused them. And the only living things in the dream realm were humans and nightmare creatures. These weren't made by any human. You finally caught on, I see, the teacher nodded with a small hint of approval. Good luck, little sister. The man dissipated into her shadow, leaving her to her own devices. Fine, be that way. I don't need you anyway. Rain narrowed her gaze. She would find this creature. Hadn't she been trained for this? Yes. Tracking wasn't hard, especially when the thing didn't care if it was being tracked. All Rain needed to do was follow her instincts and look for the signs of the creature's path. Soon, she was hot on its trail. The longer she continued on the path, the fresher the tracks became. Rain gathered all the information she could glean as she traveled. The creature scraped the ground as it walked, leaving gashes in the frozen earth. Was it so bulky that it couldn't raise itself as it walked? There were 2 lines of such markings a large distance apart. How big was this abomination? Rain shivered. It was getting colder, and she was getting closer. Closer to the lair of her prey. Closer to the monster. Closer to the moment of truth. Closing in on a small cave, Rain finally heard the sounds of the abomination she sought. It sounded like chewing. I can do this. Rain repeated to herself. Tucking the dagger in her belt, Rain stopped and strung her bow. Knocking an arrow, she crept closer to the hole. Today's goal was to observe the creature and learn its habits. But it seemed her prey was resting in the alcove. Perhaps it was hoping to trap her. That was something she would not let happen. Waiting outside until the thing decided to leave was not a great option. It had been out recently, and who knew how long it would take for the creature to exit its hovel again. Should she try to lure it out? That would require going back for some kind of bait. Yeah, I'm not doing that. As risky as it was, Rain would have to peek inside if she wanted to get a view of the monster that she wanted to slay. With measured precision, Rain moved almost silently to the small cave and aimed her bow at the entrance. Her eyes opened wide. What in 2 worlds? Rain watched for a moment in disbelief. The creature was not facing her, gorging itself on something that was out of her view. The back facing her was full of gray hair jutting out at odd angles. Now she understood the odd scrapes along the ground. They were not from many legs but from the fur dragging below the monster as it entered and exited its home. Though not incredibly long, the hair must have been very sturdy to etch its movements into the mountainside. That was the only strong thing about this beast. Rain's face burned. She had seen enough. The huntress exited the cave and moved away from the entrance without being noticed. Then with a low growl, she addressed her shadow. Is this some sort of joke, teacher? If so, it isn't funny. A joke? No. This is your first hunt. Not everyone can be like your teacher and kill an awakened tyrant as easily as dying before they awaken. I thought you would appreciate taking it slow. The man defended himself from the shadows. Slow is one thing. That thing is an insult. A human toddler probably weighs more than that monster. Don't let its size fool you, the man warned her. Do your research and then we will come back another time to finish it off. The shadow fell silent, pointing toward the cave. Seems you've been noticed. Scraping filed the air followed by a low rumble. Bracing herself, Rain looked up to see a furry creature leave its cozy home and hobble up the hillside toward her. The grating against the stone was awkward and uneven. It seemed to have one additional leg on its right side than its left. Its strange gait tugged at Rain's heart in a way she couldn't describe. Poor thing. It looks hurt. Put away those dewy eyes. It is still a nightmare creature. Did it put you under a mind hex or something? An impossibly long hand reached out of Rain's shadow and waved in front of her face. The girl blinked and swatted at the incorporeal fingers. What? No. Rain whispered to her companion. It's just, kind of cute in a pitiful kind of way. The shadow scoffed. Leave it to my baby sister to find an abomination attractive. You are supposed to be gathering information, not looking for a new pet. But the girl tilted her head. It was such a little guy. Or was it a girl? How did one tell genders of creatures from another world? How did it even survive so long in such a desolate place? While she didn't want it for a pet, her teacher was right about one thing. Even with the spiny covering, it did look oddly petable. The man in the shadows clicked his tongue. I can see it on your face. You are second-guessing yourself. I will have to go find something more ferocious looking for you to battle. I should have known you weren't strong enough for this. The words pricked the girl's pride. She scowled. I am strong enough. Rain straightened her back. I don't need to do any more research. I can kill it here and now. The shadow sighed. So stubborn and petty, he muttered. Where did you learn such terrible traits? The girl ignored his barbs, focusing on the nightmare creature making its way toward her. It was a little sad to end the life of something so small, but it was corrupted and already limping. I am putting it out of its misery, she assured herself. Raising her bow, Rain placed all her focus on her aim. The thing was moving so slowly that it was almost a still target. She could hit it with her eyes closed. It was too easy. Under Rain's guide, the arrow released with a whiz through the air and struck the small critter directly in the back. The spectacular clang like a bell made Rain flinch. Yet she did not take her eyes off of the scene. Stunned, the beast finally opened its beady eyes for the first time. Then they shut almost immediately. The tubby body of the creature rolled to one side with a lurch and fell. Then, everything went silent. Rain held her breath and counted to 20. Nothing happened. She lowered her bow, slightly bewildered. She had done it. She had done it. She had killed her first nightmare creature with a single shot. Of course, her teacher remained silent. He didn't even congratulate her. And he said that she was petty. He is probably fuming that I proved to him that no more observation was needed. Now, let's go see this thing up close. Rain crept forward, paying attention to anything around her that might move. One thing was sure in the dream realm, death attracted attention. Fortunately, it didn't seem like anything would immediately come out of the mountainside to swallow her and her prize. Rain pressed her toe against the creature. It was twice as wide as her foot and 3 times as long. It looked a bit like a creature called a hedgehog that she had seen in a book once. Quite curious, she studied the spines of the beast more closely and a small smile came to her face. I see why you wanted me to track this creature. The spines will make beautiful arrowheads. Rain's eyes glistened. Her mundane arrows would be okay for piercing the eye and mouth of some creatures, but this material would go a long way to helping her attack more powerful monsters in the future. It was very lucky that her equipment was strong enough to get through the creature's hide on the first try even though she hadn't hit a sensitive area. Oh, the possibilities for the future. She would be like her teacher and take down awakened tyrants. Maybe someday she would be just like the ancient deity teaching a pupil of her own. Rain picked up the butterball of corruption, careful not to cut her hands on the needles. Idly, she began to count the spines to see just how many arrowheads she might be able to make from the small critter. She might even be able to make a better knife than the one she had. I take back what I said about my teacher. He was very generous to give me this gift. Aren't you forgetting something? The figure in question came out of her shadow to look at her seriously. What do you mean? Rain felt her ears burning. The man tapped his foot. Think for a moment. Did you hear an announcement of the creature's death? An announcement. She had seen in webtoons that the spell announced a kill, but she was not awakened or even a sleeper. Why would the spell talk to me? The spell. What nonsense are you talking about? The spell wouldn't talk to you. The teacher rubbed his forehead. I meant, did you hear me announce the kill? Rain frowned. Oh, no, I didn't hear that. Her teacher lowered his chin. That's because I didn't say it. The girl bit back her retort, considering his words for a moment. Then a startling realization came over her as she looked down at the creature in her arms. Oh, it's not dead. Rain had wondered at the power of her arrow, but now she realized it was not as mighty as she thought. She had simply stunned it, or the beast had lured her in by pretending. Either way, it was very much alive, and beginning to move. Rain went to release the creature, but not fast enough. Fingers, the teacher warned belatedly. The spines of the creature stretched in all directions, slicing the girl's palms, sleeves and barely missing her torso. Rain scrambled away, tripping in the process and tearing her pants. She cursed. Screeching its own protest, the hedgehog rolled onto its belly and stood on 5 legs. Its eyes opened and locked on Rain with burning hatred. It's less cute when it looks at me like that, Rain gulped. What are you doing? Get up. What's the hurry? Whoa. Rain gasped. The creature lifted its spines from the ground and ran toward her like a bull seeing red. She barely managed to escape the charge by rolling to one side. She snatched her bow from her shoulder and knocked an arrow in it. The man placed his head in his palm. Did you learn nothing? Aiming at one open eye this time, Rain released her arrow at the hedgehog. Like the last, it flew silently through the crisp afternoon air. The shot was true, ready to plunge deep into the creature's skull. Until, just below the beady eyes, a chasm opened. It continued to spread wide, looking like it could swallow the creature to which it was attached. Rows of gnarly, gnashed teeth dripping with crimson shimmered in the sunlight. A lolling tongue unfurled and snatched the arrow from the sky and pulled it into its mouth. Then the hedgehog closed its mouth and began to chew. It ate my arrow. Rain's indignation was profound. The arrow isn't what you should be worrying about. Shaking his head, the shadowy figure took a step back. Rain went to knock another arrow, her palms screaming with her bleeding cuts. The hedgehog shifted with a grunt, settling her with an angry glare. Before she could release her shot, the furball leapt into the air with astonishing speed and flew directly at the teen. Its mangled teeth clamped down on Rain's reinforced jacket. It's on my shoulder, she screamed, but her teacher did not lift a finger or even move to help her. So, get it off. Panicking, Rain dropped her bow and slammed her thumb into the eye of the biting beast. The creature squealed and released its jaw. Rain felt its spines run across her cheek as she leaned away. Blood oozed across her pale skin. She touched her face. It bit me. Before, the huntress had been unfocused and uncoordinated. The whole encounter had been unlike anything she had experienced before. Now, she was angry. She abandoned her bow for the moment and reached for the knife at her waist. The world around her slowed down. This time when the creature leapt at her, Rain was ready. Avoiding the spiny outer coat, the huntress ducked under her beady-eyed foe and twisted her body to face it. The blade started its move toward the belly but was kicked away by the beast's foreleg. Rain barely managed to hold onto the blade. She looked down at it to see a nick in the polished steel. Her expression darkened. Another hit like that would break her blade. Would she have to fight with her bare hands at that point? Or would her supposed big brother finally intervene? Rain spared her teacher a glance. He looked more like a shadow than a man just now, picking some grime out of his nails. Is he sitting in a chair? It looked like the dark deity would let her live or die on her own while he enjoyed the show. Some teacher he turned out to be. Rain squared her shoulders. Who needs him? She spun around to face her opponent again, this time with grim determination. The hedgehog ran his hooves along the ground, ready for another run at his petite opponent. Only this time, it was the teen who went sprinting forward. The beast reared back to open its mouth and welcome its dinner. At the last moment, Rain tucked her head and came in under the beast's chin, ramming her injured shoulder into the creature's unprotected chest. The teen screamed, but she took the pain and channeled it into the knife in her other hand. The sudden charge had not only been to throw the abomination off balance but also so that Rain could find the best spot in the hedgehog's belly to attack. Got you. Muscles tensing, Rain plunged the knife deep into the nightmare creature, slipping the blade between two rib-like bones. The teen felt something burst inside the beast's chest. Her lungs felt they might burst too, but she held on until they both hit the ground. Rain pushed herself off of the beast at the final moment, rolling away from the creature as it collided with the dirt. The unpleasant thud knocked the wind out of her body, but Rain willed herself to stand and face the next attack. Thankfully, there was none. The creature lay on the ground at an awkward angle supported by its hairy spines. The legs were completely limp and its eyes stared vacantly toward the cloudy sky. You have slain a dormant beast, Pricklepants, her teacher said softly. Really? Rain wiped her brow. Well, that is the name I gave it while watching you. I have no idea of that thing's actual title. The man's chair dissipated as he stood. I mean, I really killed it. Ah, yes. I suppose I should also say, you have grown stronger, or at least you will when you smash the shard inside. My own soul shard. I can hardly believe it. Rain felt like crying, though whether it was from exhaustion or excitement, she couldn't say. First you have to get it, the man reminded her, tilting his head. Oh, my knife. Rain chirped. When she had disengaged from the Pricklepants, her hand had been unable to keep hold of the slick handle of her blade. That's twice in one battle you have forgotten about it, the teacher chided her. It's a good thing your head is attached or you might forget it too. Haha, very funny. Rain rolled her eyes and positioned herself over the dead beast. She placed her battered hands on the hilt of the knife and prepared to pull. Rain. The girl stuck out her tongue, deep in concentration. Not now, I almost have it. The shadow of a man crossed his arms. Suit yourself, but the way you are standing is. The knife came out at that very moment. Like a pulled plug, it released the pressure that had been building from the creature's chest cavity. Blood sprayed in all directions, covering the girl in a crimson mist. Rain sputtered and spat, dripping like a soaked puppy from the sanguine rain. The dark deity studied her condition with a frown. You know, with a little more observation and research, you might have learned that this particular creature has a special ability to hold an immense amount of air inside of it which is sometimes released at inopportune times. Rain shook, trying to get off as much blood as possible before it froze to her skin. I get it, teacher. Next time I will do all my research and lure it into a trap like we planned. Good. Because next time I might not be there to help you. The ancient man tilted up his nose. You didn't help me this time. The girl whined. It is not my fault you chose to ignore my advice. At least you succeeded. He pointed at the now deflated fluffball. All in all, probably not the worst I have seen. So good job. Thank you, teacher. Rain could feel the compliment behind his words. She hadn't disappointed him, or herself. She had slain a nightmare creature and lived to tell about it. The teen felt a surge of pride in her accomplishment. Teacher, Rain looked at the shadowy figure full of expectation. Now that I've killed my first creature with my own hands, how close am I to awakening? The dark deity smiled as he tapped his chin. After a moment of contemplation, he nodded decisively. Very close. I'd say another year or 10 and you'll really have something. What? Digging out the soul shard had taken some time and trying to break it open had taken even more. By the time Rain felt the strange sensation trickle into her soul, she was almost too tired to appreciate its significance. Almost. She lay down on the ground, soaking in the small amount of power that she felt flow into her. I'll keep the carcass. I'll make you some arrows that might actually do some good. The teacher said, his mouth curving up slightly. You would do that for me, teacher. Rain tilted her head up in surprise. Of course. I cannot have my only disciple dying because of poor workmanship. The dark deity waved his hand dismissively. Thank you, teacher. Rain was too happy not to have to make the arrows to argue about whether her own were inferior. She shut her eyes, reveling in the stillness of the moment. The ice felt good against her aching body. Rain was cold but happy. A toe pressed against her shoulder, causing her to cry out. What are you doing? she screamed as her eyes popped open. Enough rest. You'll freeze out here if you fall asleep. Plus, you should get that shoulder looked at. I can't have you getting infected with monster drool, can I? The man sniffed. Plus, you kind of smell. I do not. Rain inhaled deeply, choking on her own stench. Okay, maybe a little. Looking at the horizon, Rain realized it was later than she thought. As much as she didn't want to admit it, being caught out after dark in the wilderness near Ravenheart was not something she could handle just yet. Groaning, Rain stood and gathered her things. Although her tutor had offered to make her arrows, she would have to take the knife with her to see if it could be salvaged. Rain tucked the battered blade back into her jacket. That was a problem for another day. It was time to go home. Rain hadn't really thought too much about her appearance until she reached the city gate. While the guards didn't ask too many questions after she announced that she killed a dormant beast, they did spend extra time checking to make sure that she was in her right mind and not taken, whatever that meant. It wasn't until Rain made it to her home and saw her family's faces that she realized just how gruesome she must look. And now, looking at the creases in her parents' faces, Rain could see that her reckless behavior had done more than just annoy her teacher. For that, she was regretful. To ease their minds, she had told them the events as they unfolded. Fort rubbed his head, looking years older than when the conversation began. Let me get this straight. You went out into the wilderness, tracked down a nightmare creature, battled it in hand-to-hand combat, and killed a dormant beast all by yourself. It does sound pretty fantastic when you put it all together like that. Rain rubbed the back of her neck. The teen had left her mysterious teacher out of the story, of course. The dark deity had told her not to mention him to anyone, but more than that, Rain was worried about what her parents might think if she admitted there was a man living in her shadow. They would think she had gone insane. With the current evidence before them, she wouldn't blame them for coming to that conclusion anyway. That is quite an accomplishment, Noble responded slowly. An impossible feat, Fort agreed. Most mundane soldiers wouldn't have tried something like that. They have their armor and high-powered weapons for a reason. Weapons like that don't work here, Rain reminded him. All the more reason to be careful. Fort pressed his lips together. I will be more careful next time. The teen crossed her heart with her good arm. And next time. Fort stared at the scratches on the girl's hands and face with a complicated expression. Rain reached out and gripped her father's hand, ignoring the stinging of her broken skin. She smiled at him gently. It won't be for a while, I assure you. After his initial outburst, her father had been eerily calm. Was her mom feeding him emotions to keep him from hitting the ceiling? I don't understand why you are doing what you are doing. Fort tried not to sound as defeated as he must have felt. Rain sighed. If I am honest, I am not sure that I understand it myself. I can't explain it, but this is what I was born to do, Dad. I need to be strong. You just have to trust me. 100 different expressions passed across the man's face before he covered it with his free hand. When he came out, there was a silent resignation in his eyes. I love you, and I am glad you are all right. He leaned forward and hugged the teen, careful not to hurt her shoulder. I won't ever understand, but I will always love you dearly. With that, Fort touched his wife's arm and headed out of the room. Is Dad all right? Rain asked when her father left the room. Noble closed her eyes for a moment before turning away from the door. He will be. I think he has finally accepted that you are growing up and going to do your own thing. Have you accepted it? Rain asked carefully. I am coming to terms with it in my own way. What you did was very dangerous, Rain. An object from beside the bed floated into Noble's waiting palm. And this is what you used. I will have to get you something better. Rain looked up at her mother with surprise. Really? Noble arched her brow. I can't have my only daughter going around with a subpar weapon, can I? You sound like someone else I know, Rain chuckled. Thanks, Mom. Don't get me wrong. I am with your father in not liking these antics. But watching you tell that story just now, I saw something. A different kind of future. And I didn't hate what I saw. Noble's words struck a chord deep in the teen's soul. A different future. That is what she wanted, wasn't it? A way for her and her brothers, and the rest of humanity to awaken without the spell. I don't care if it takes a year or even 10, I can do it. The girl vowed silently to herself. There's just one thing. This path you are on. People have noticed. Just today, I had someone let me know that you are gaining a nickname of sorts. Nickname. Rain tilted her head. She had noticed some of her peers giving her funny looks lately, but hadn't given it much thought. Noble hesitated. Yes, they are calling you, crazy girl. Noble flinched, but Rain answered with a musical laugh. Is that all? Then let them talk. They aren't wrong. The girl rolled her shoulder experimentally. There is a fine line between genius and insanity. I guess we will have to see which side of the line I fall on. Noble relaxed. Before you go trying for either of those again, at least let me treat those wounds properly. The mother left the room and returned with a tub of ointment. I'm fine, Mom, really. Rain protested. If you are going to be a fighter, you need to know how to properly treat yourself. Since you won't let me take you to a physician, let me show you what to do. Seeing the sense in her mother's words, Rain nodded and opened the collar of her shirt. Already the bruises were turning a sickly purplish black. Noble smiled apologetically as she unscrewed the lid from the cream. Sweet Rainy, you never take the easy way, do you? The mother clicked her tongue. We will get you fixed up in no time. But hold still, this is going to sting. Noble came out of her daughter's room wiping her hands with a clean towel. After disinfecting all the wounds, the doting mother had sent Rain for a bath before showing her how to take care of the bruises and manage the pain. The process had taken a while, and by the time Noble came downstairs, dinner had been made, eaten, and put away by 3 of the 5 family members. We saved some for you and Rain. Fort pointed to 2 bowls being kept warm by the fire. Thank you. Noble dumped the dirty water from her basin and placed the towel with the bloodied clothes that were still soaking. Should I bring Rain her food? Blaze offered. Noble cut her eyes at the young man. I suppose. I'll go too. Brock hurried over to gather the meal. We should keep her company after such a long day. Fort frowned. You can go, but don't badger your sister. If she wants to be alone, you respect that. Yes, Dad. The boys nodded obediently before running up the stairs with the food in tow. They aren't going to leave her until they get every detail. Noble took the second bowl and brought it to the table. As selfish as it is, I am just glad they stopped asking me. Fort gave a weary grin as he pulled back Noble's chair. She hovered over it out of habit. How are you doing? Noble sipped at the broth, happy for the nourishment. Fort looked at her carefully. You know how I am. You know how everyone in the upper city is. Noble set down her spoon. I suppose that is true. Then I'll restate my question. How are you so calm? Rain screamed at me that we had different definitions of dangerous. It hurt to hear, but I realized she was right. We worry about different things. I hate the idea of her getting a bump or bruise, sure. And the thought of her going out and doing what she did today terrifies me. She absorbed a soul shard as a mundane human, B. That alone will get people talking if they find out. Add to that when they find out she killed a nightmare creature just for sport. I wouldn't be surprised if someone from Song Clan contacts me to ask about it. Fort rubbed his temple as he pictured the pile of paperwork he would have to fill out if there was an inquiry. But what can I do? Lock Rain in her room. Fort seriously considered the option for a second before casting it aside. It would only work for another year at most. After today, I wouldn't be surprised if she tries to move out sooner. Move out? Noble felt her stomach flutter. The idea of her daughter leaving for good was an unappealing prospect. Surely that moment hadn't come already. My brother took off when he thought my parents were unreasonable. Fort's focus became distant. I don't want to chase off Rain. Rain is not like your brother. Noble squeezed her husband's arm. She wants to make the world better just like we do. Yet what she is doing is completely different. Have you thought about what will happen if she actually succeeds? Fort's voice dropped to a whisper. Things will get really complicated, really quickly. What do you mean? Noble furrowed her brow. Rain would be giving the greatest gift to humanity by awakening outside of the spell. What could be bad about that? Who controls how people ascend right now? Fort asked, his voice still lowered. Noble didn't speak, but her eyes moved in the direction of the Titanic Bridge and the Jade Palace which lay beyond it. The ambassador nodded. And how do you think she and the King of Valor are going to feel if a little girl goes and strips them of that control? Noble chewed her lip. Currently, mundane humans could not leave the influence of the sovereigns without being plunged into a nightmare. Beyond that, the great clans had cornered the market on most saints because up until Antarctica, they tightly controlled who could go into which nightmare. Breaking from the spell would turn that system on its head and could eventually challenge the minor deities of Bastion and Ravenheart. If they see Rain as a threat to their power, they might eliminate her before she becomes a problem. Noble felt her throat go dry with her words. Surely they would leave her alone right now. The likelihood of her success is low enough that they shouldn't feel threatened. If we think this is possible, then we need to prepare. Even if Rain doesn't do it, someone else might, and they should be able to rely on the government's protection. Fort's handsome features regained some of the youth they had lost earlier in the day. He had a mission now, and he always seemed younger when he had a cause to champion. What exactly will you do? Noble asked him, her mind enjoying the view. I don't know yet, but I will do whatever I can to protect this family. He smiled at her, and what was left of her resolve melted. You're a good man, Fort, Noble said gently. She leaned forward and kissed her husband. He pulled her forward, setting her on his knee as he welcomed her embrace. As the tender moment passed, the couple rested their foreheads against one another. You think Rain can do it, don't you? Noble touched her husband's nose. She has the drive and that indefinable quality that she obviously learned from her most excellent mother. Fort stole a kiss with a mischievous grin. Then he added more seriously. There is something special about her. We've always known that. And if there is a guardian watching over her like you think, then she was meant for big things, right? Right, Noble nodded. She pulled away from her husband and went back to her meal. Fort tilted down his chin. I would like to meet this protector someday. I'm sure you would. Noble ignored the implied request. Hopefully someday you will. Interesting that Rain didn't mention it when she told her story. Do you think it was there? Noble took a long sip of soup before answering. I have no way of knowing for sure. I wasn't there. The ambassador noted her answer with a raised eyebrow. If it was, I would like to know why it let Rain get hurt. It is curious indeed. Noble finished off her soup and smacked her lips. That was excellent. My compliments to the chefs. I hate how you always change the subject when I bring up certain topics. Fort shook his head as he leaned back in his seat. He had expected it, but it was still exasperating. Noble understood. If I could tell you I would, my love. Trust me, I do. Fort let the matter go. By the time the ambassador lay down his head on his pillow, the end of their discussion had all but been forgotten by him. He had many other plans to make starting in the morning. But the words had stuck with Noble. As she stepped into the night under the light of the 3 moons, she planned to get some answers. Exiting her home, Noble shivered not from the cold, but from the night itself. It is unreasonable to think that just because it is dark that I will fall asleep and float away, she reminded herself. Noble was a master now, and her need for rest was far below what mundane humans required. On evenings when she went out, Fort was always nearby. With his presence, Noble felt anchored to the ground. He would never let her just drift off. But her husband was safely slumbering in the house just now, so Noble would have to deal with the unpleasant feeling that the night air brought. Fort wouldn't have been able to come with her for what she wanted to do anyway. Coming around the back of the house, Noble studied the shadows. I know you are here, she whispered sharply. Nothing stirred in the darkness. Noble frowned. Don't make me go looking. Making the moon's light brighter will attract attention that neither you nor I want. The professor rarely used her talent outside of her house. There was usually no need. More than that, Noble wanted to keep that trick up her sleeve. She had no talent for other names, so even if some sorcerer wanted to recruit her as an apprentice or colleague, they would both be wasting their time. Thankfully, Noble didn't need to know any other names. Her threat worked. Out of the shadows, a man materialized leaning against the wall of her house. Noble furrowed her brow. I want answers. What if I don't want to give them? Sunny responded, raising one eyebrow in challenge. His appearance was nonchalant, but Noble could feel his underlying anxiety. Then you wouldn't have appeared. You would have let me look for you every night from now on like some lunatic. The professor crossed her arms. Sunny was far more powerful than her. She had sensed that at their first meeting. But he also cared. Why should he care what she thought? It was something that Noble had mused more than once. It could have been his concern for Rain extended to Noble, but the master couldn't shake the feeling that he had at least some personal regard for her as well. If Sunny had less respect, he could have done more to separate Rain from the family. Instead, he had honored the integrity of their home and its boundaries. The man in black did not argue her point. Instead, he waved his arm for her to join him in the shadow of the wall. What do you want to know? Floating closer to him, Noble's gaze became sharp. Tell me why. While Noble was glad that the man had come out so easily, she wasn't about to let him off the hook. Frowning, Sunny tilted his head. You are going to have to be more specific. Noble blew out her cheeks. You took Rain into the wilderness to kill a nightmare creature today. Sunny held up a finger. Technically I took her out there to track and observe a dormant beast. Her decision to attack and kill it was completely her own. Noble shook her head. You put her in danger. Her shoulder is badly mangled. You could have stopped that from happening. And stunt her growth. Sunny looked genuinely confused. As a fellow teacher, you know the importance of making mistakes. If I rescued her from every little thing, then all she would learn was how to rely on me. Noble wanted to argue, but in her own training with Rain, she had let the girl get hurt, even causing a few of the injuries to her daughter during their spars. Although the professor hated to admit it, avoidance of pain was a powerful motivator in learning. The professor shook her head. But she does rely on you. She trusts you. And you are leading her down a path that no one has been down. Which brings me back to my original question. Why did this? That was the thing bugging Noble. Sister or not, Sunny was putting a lot of effort into training a teenager for something that to the rest of the world seemed impossible. Because I want to. A smile came to Sunny's lips as if it were some joke that Noble didn't understand. But more importantly because Rain wants to do it. I would never force her. Noble felt the sincerity in his words. What happens if she succeeds? When she succeeds, Sunny corrected her before Noble could finish her question. Fine. What happens when she succeeds? Have you thought this through? It is possible that she will make some very powerful enemies. Awakening won't protect her from them. Fort said he will work with the government too. Sunny's expression darkened. The government won't be able to protect her. So you have thought about it then. Noble resented how he had been so dismissive of her husband and his work. If they aren't going to keep her safe, who will? Or do you plan to let her learn that through pain as well? Do you care what happens after your experiment is complete? Enough questions. The man gritted his teeth. Yes, I have thought about it, and yes I care. When she succeeds, I will protect her at all costs. Noble furrowed her brow. For how long? Sunny looked at her for a long time, anger burning in his tenebrous eyes. Her enemies are mine, and I will not rest until I or my enemies are destroyed. Noble wanted to ask him to swear, to promise that what he said was true. But she didn't need to. His meaning was clear, Sunny would protect Rain until his dying breath. You mean what you say? The professor took in his words. She's family, came the response. That was it then. What more could there be to say? Noble couldn't be there for every moment of Rain's life, but it seemed Sunny could. More than that, Rain wanted him around. Have you told her that you are her brother? The strange saint laughed bitterly. I told her today, but it's clear she doesn't believe me. Rain had never mentioned a brother to her parents, so Noble could understand that the girl might be skeptical. Give her time. I would have a hard time believing that a powerful being residing in the shadows was related to me as well. I suppose. Sunny seemed less than convinced. Speaking of family, Noble took a deep breath. I love Rain, and I only want the best for her. Fort too. While I didn't mention you directly, he knows something is up. He isn't stupid, Sunny acknowledged with a slight nod. Ford wants to meet whatever or whoever is influencing his daughter. Noble's eyes swirled as she spoke. Not happening. Sunny turned away. Next you'll want me to meet the twins as well. They would think you are the most impressive person to ever walk the earth, Noble smiled slightly. They would want you to train them too. As well they should, but still, it's not happening. Sunny crossed his arms. No one can know that this or any other conversation happened between us. For both our sakes. So you have told me. Even though Noble didn't like it, she somewhat understood. Sunny wasn't just residing in Rain's shadow, he seemed to be hiding from the world. The more people that knew about him, the more complicated his life would become. Fine, your secret is safe with me, Noble conceded. But Sunny, someday I do hope you will introduce yourself to us, all of us, properly. Maybe someday, Sunny smiled sadly as he dissolved into the shadows. Then again, who knows? I've been told to be careful what you wish for. Noble spent the rest of the night staring out her kitchen window. Unless he had retreated to a safer distance, Sunny was out there somewhere in the shadows. Maybe he was thinking too. She certainly was. Leaning on the windowsill, the pensive master stared up at the stars. Unable to sleep, her mind was pulled in a dozen different directions. The pile of memories awaiting her study. Master Yash and the Skinwalker. The plans she had for the Dreamer Academy in the morning. But one image pulled her back from all the other things cluttering her mind, Rain covered in blood. It hadn't been as bad as Noble initially thought, but the shock of what might have been rattled her more than she was willing to admit. Thankfully, today it hadn't been an emergency. Rain hadn't even needed professional care. That bloody scene and the ramifications of what her daughter was trying to do were what made Noble confront the shadowy guardian. He had answered all of her questions, and been honest in his responses. That made things harder. If he had lied or broken her trust in some way, she could have justified going against him. If he had tried to deceive or belittle Noble, she would have had grounds for advising Rain to take another path. The professor reviewed what both Rain and her elder brother had told her over and over again. No matter which way she looked at it, her hands were tied. The only alternative Rain would see for this training was entering a nightmare. That was trading one possibly deadly situation for another. In her desire to grow strong, Rain gravitated toward danger. Sooner or later, Noble would have to accept that. She would have to let things play out. I already have to rely on Ki Song to protect my family from the spell, and now I have to rely on a long-lost family member to protect Rain from everything else. Noble frowned. I don't like it. But what could she do? Unless she wanted to try something drastic. Noble rubbed her eyes. Major decisions made in the middle of the night were rarely wise. In the morning things would look different. Instead of committing herself to a choice she might later regret, Noble dove into her soul sea. The shimmering water stretched far and wide, bathed by an iridescent sun. No matter how many times Noble viewed this scene, it always took her breath away. Beside her, a golden creature manifested on the shore. Helios. Noble reached out and pressed her palm into the furry mane as the Simcus purred softly. Either from her unspoken command or simply in response to her needs, the mighty creature curled up on the ground, allowing Noble to climb on his back. The exhausted master nestled into his fur with a relieved sigh. Thank you, Leo. It's been a long day. There aren't many distractions here in Ravenheart to keep my mind occupied. Noble frowned, or maybe there are too many distractions. It's hard to tell. The beautiful creature laid his head down on his paws. Whatever Noble needed, he would be there. And just now the woman desperately needed to feel grounded. Things are too complicated. Noble stared at the star-like orbs overhead. I liked it better when all I needed to worry about was what memory I might encounter that day. Those days have long passed. Noble chuckled softly, causing Helios to raise one ear in her direction. Sorry, I was just realizing that they didn't seem simple at the time. Many of those times seemed like the end of the world too, yet life went on. Not that fighting diaper rash and killing a nightmare creature posed the same level of danger, but they each felt dire in their own way. While there was no use dwelling on what once was, there was a small amount of solace in reminiscing. So with Helios as her audience, Noble recounted what being a mother, professor, and Dreamscape champion had looked like before everything changed. Was she already old enough to sit on the front porch and recount the good old days? It seemed so, but the retelling of past trials and victories was oddly therapeutic. Remembering them brought the moments in time back to life, if only for the briefest moment. It was just the distraction Noble had been looking for. Slowly, she drifted off on a river of her memories onto the shores of sleep. Mom, Mom, Blaze called, breaking through to Noble's consciousness. The professor yawned before frowning. Something very rough was pressed against her cheek. Had she somehow gotten her head caught between the wall and the bed? Is that why Blaze was yelling at her? How long has she been asleep? Noble didn't remember going to bed. That was because she hadn't. Oh. Noble opened her eyes to see the brown planks against her face. Her entire body was pressed up against the painted wood adorning the ceiling of the first floor. Her clothes hung down around her, and one of her slippers had fallen to the ground at some point in her upward float. No wonder Blaze sounded panicked. I'm fine, dear. I just got a little too relaxed in my soul sea and fell asleep. Noble brushed her hair back from her face as she made the short journey to the ground. What's going on down here? Fort hurried down the stairs after hearing Blaze's cry. The young man pursed his lips. Mom fell asleep in the kitchen and was hanging out on the ceiling like a spider. Fort glanced up at the ceiling as if looking for a human-sized web. How did that happen? Noble flushed. I had a lot on my mind, so I tried to clear it of worry. It seems I did too good of a job. The ambassador nodded. At least you did it inside. Noble rubbed the back of her neck. Yeah, I think next time I will head to bed instead of staring out at the stars. Not the most comfortable way to sleep. The front door swung open, drawing the attention of the three in the kitchen. Brock bounded in with a satisfied grin. It was an excellent morning run, he announced, and good news. There are no dormant beasts about because they are afraid of ending up like their unfortunate friend. You better not have been hunting for them. Fort leveled his gaze at the elder twin. Brock held up his hands. Who, me? No way. Not today anyway. I was just out for my morning exercise. In the absence of a track team, the boy had made his own path around the neighborhood to keep up his training. Noble was a little shocked that she hadn't heard him leave. Exactly what time was it? She went to the door to peek outside when a moving shadow caught her eye. She looked in that direction, but instead of seeing a figure, a package lay neatly tied with twine. Picking it up, Noble looked at the writing on the top of the inconspicuous box. To Professor Noble. From nobody. This wasn't here when I opened the door. Noble looked out at the street. Things were relatively quiet in the morning sun. The shadows were still long enough to shroud the homes in their embrace before being bathed in light. No one was in sight, but that didn't mean that no one was there. Looking down at the package again, Noble smothered a smirk. Nobody, let's see what nobody has to say. Opening the package, Noble's eyes went wide. She read the note on top. A peace offering from a nobody to a somebody. You know what to do. The contents of the package caused her fingers to twitch. If not for her ability to levitate, the parcel would have fallen to the ground. Noble gasped. It can't be. There's no way. Everything okay? Fort asked from inside the house. Not trusting her readable face, Noble kept her back to the room. Everything is fine. It was more than fine. What she was looking at was amazing but also highly problematic. What would happen if this were found in her possession in Ravenheart? Suddenly, Noble felt a great urgency to act. I'll take care of it, she whispered. Wrapping the paper back around the package, the professor took a deep breath. Peeking her head back in the door, Noble smiled at her family. I left a lot of work in the waking world. This morning air has invigorated me, so I think I will pop over to my classroom and tackle what I can. Only you could make traveling between worlds sound like a summer stroll. Fort furrowed his brow. Wait, it's Thursday. Don't you have the Dreamer Academy today? It isn't meeting until this afternoon. I will be back before then, I promise. If Saint Kai drops in again, be sure to bring him by so I can show him our future location. Noble winked. You didn't tell me that you got that settled. Fort motioned for his wife to come back inside. Reluctantly, Noble floated the package back to the doorstep. Entering the home, she explained quickly. Oh yes, that was one of the reasons I went to government headquarters yesterday. And everything went smoothly. The ambassador put a kettle of water to heat on the stove. Mostly. There was just one hiccup. The area I selected was more than the government wanted to pay, so I struck a deal with them to cover the difference. Fort's brows came so low that they nearly covered his eyes. What kind of deal and how much of a difference? I just asked for an advance on future contract work. As for the amount, I'm not sure. I will look when I get the documents tomorrow. But it would also be nice if you could convince Song to come down on the price. The beautiful woman batted her eyelashes playfully. B, please. The professor flashed a sweet smile. Ah, help her out, Dad. Brock came to his mother's aid. I need the school to be built so I can attend it next year. And next year. Fort's eyebrows shot in the opposite direction into his hairline. Son, you are barely 13, what makes you think? As riveting as this upcoming discussion will be, I am heading out. Noble pounced on the opportunity that her elder son had given her. Aren't you going to shower or change clothes? Blaze looked at his mother's rumpled clothing. Noble flushed. Being on the ceiling hadn't been comfortable or good for her wardrobe. While it would be good to clean up, Noble didn't want to leave the package on the doorstep for anyone else to find. There was no time to waste. She summoned the loyal tabard and pushed back her hair from her face. I'll shower at the academy. No offense to our plumbing, but their water pressure is far superior. Noble hugged her husband and kissed him. She frowned. I'll brush my teeth there also. Your words, not mine. Fort grinned, looking her up and down with a curious expression. Are you sure you don't want to clean up a little? Noble's smile faltered. Are you ashamed of me unless I am fully put together? No. You are beautiful no matter what. Fort backtracked quickly. Ah, thank you. I'll see you this evening. There are biscuits in the cupboard for whoever wants them. Oh, boys, make sure Rain rests today. No going outside Ravenheart while her shoulder is healing. Yes, Mom. The twins chirped, happy to be able to boss their older sister around. Noble would let them figure it out. Problem solving was part of growing up. She headed out the door for the second time. Thankfully the package was still on the porch. It was a risk to leave it outside, but a bigger one to bring it in to be spied by little eyes. Noble summoned her storage memory and stuffed the parcel inside. Dismissing it to her soul sea, she felt calmer but no less curious. Forget this. I don't want to wait. Noble smoothed her hair, trying to fight the unruly tangles with only her fingers for a brush. How did her hair get so messy just hanging in the air? It didn't matter. Noble called on her bracelets and adjusted them on her wrists. Then she quietly whispered the name of light and getting darker. The world directly around her dimmed. Was this what it felt like to be a shadow? Probably not, but it was as close as Noble would come. She lifted into the air and flew toward the Jade Palace, abandoning all pretense of walking in the early morning light. It didn't matter if someone saw her. No one had any way to know about the mysterious gift in her possession. Hiding only makes me look suspicious, she realized and adjusted the light around her back to its normal state. Coming to the steps of the Jade Palace, Noble lowered herself to the ground, startling the guard stationed there. He held up his sword and then lowered it. Master Noble, why does he sound like he doesn't know me? Yes, it's me, Tino, the professor dipped her head. I'm on my way to the Awakened Academy. I see. Tino continued to stare. I almost didn't recognize you with your new look. Biting her tongue, Noble picked a splinter from her hair. Yes, well, it's only temporary. Have a good day, Tino. The woman rushed to the gateway, ignoring the stares of any of the clan Song members up at this hour. Finally, she passed through to the waking world. Thankfully, her classroom was empty. Well, almost empty. There is no class today. I advise you to come back at a later time unless you, Professor. B2 exclaimed as the woman looked her way. Did you get run over by a PTV? No. Hasn't anyone ever seen someone who spent the night on a ceiling before? Noble dug through her desk to find a mirror. But it's Thursday. You aren't usually here on Thursday, the android protested. Something came up that needed my immediate attention. I'll show you. Noble found a reflective object and looked at her ash-covered face. Thanks to the volcano, her ceiling was in desperate need of some cleaning. Noble winced. I'll show you, right after I shower. The exploration report on the tomb of Ariel. By nobody. Freshly cleaned, Noble positioned herself at her desk. She called forth her storage memory and pulled out the parcel inside. She looked at the cover on the bound pages with a dubious expression, afraid to open the pages and peer inside. The title alone was enough to make her heart beat wildly. Would the contents live up to what was promised? Noble wasn't sure what to hope for. What is that? B2 regarded the brown paper still obscuring the package's contents. The reason I came back to the waking world today. I needed the security of my classroom. Noble double-checked to make sure the system was activated. Shall I analyze it and synthesize any information I can glean? The assistant offered with an outstretched hand. No. Noble felt panic rise within her. Unable to read the emotion, the android moved closer. You said I could see it. I did say that, but I realized that I can't right now. The professor bit her lip. Like it or not, B2 was integrated into the government system. Noble needed to know what was in the report before she allowed the possibility that it might be uploaded to a database over which she had no control. I'm sorry, the professor felt guilty about changing her mind. Curious. The android titled its perfectly formed head. Where did you get it from? Covering the book, Noble looked up at B2. I found it, she did not elaborate. I need you to watch the door while I look through this. Fine. Keep your secrets. I hold many more than you do anyway. B2 flipped synthetic hair toward Noble before moving to obey. With her assistant guarding her classroom and her security measures active, the professor could put her full attention on the gift she had received. Opening the report, Noble was flooded with information. A river civilization. They never set foot on solid ground. They sound like my kind of people. The professor imagined not being inhibited by her flaw. Aside from the harrowing dangers in the air, it sounded like an ideal place for her to live out her days and feel normal. Of course, if Noble had been born among the river people, she never would have received the flaw that she did, so the point in the end was moot. She continued her journey through the report. Weave sounds like a fascinating place. Noble mused. If she understood correctly, the people of this strange civilization grew older or younger by moving up and down the river of time. Imagine always getting to choose one's age. Who knew the fountain of youth was actually a river? Noble smiled to herself. While she came back looking younger from her second nightmare, she would not be able to outrun the passage of time forever. There was more contained within the report. So much more. The civilization in the tomb of Ariel was so well described that Noble felt like she was there. How had the words transported her so easily into another world? The author had done his job most admirably. Toward the end of the report, Noble found a part that made her heart skip a beat. That is the origin of the nightmare spell. Surely not. Noble could not wrap her head around the nefarious thing that took the world's youth into terrible nightmares as once being meant for humanity's good. It was too much to process. They must be mistaken on that point. Can any of this even be true? Closing the report, Noble pondered her question. Changing Star and her cohort were well known for their conquering of the tomb of Ariel. Each member had come out as a top-tier saint. But there was no mention of Sunny in any of the propaganda. Had he found a different way into the tomb? Or had he gone into the nightmare with them as well? The power Rain's brother exuded was equal to, if not greater than Saint Kai. By that measure, Sunny certainly could have challenged in the third nightmare alongside the adopted Princess of Valor. But then why had Noble not heard about him? There was always the chance that he had entered the same seat and not crossed paths with the rest of the cohort, though that seemed highly unlikely. There was a far more likely reason. His participation in the nightmare is being suppressed. But then why wouldn't Sunny call out his oppressors? If he wanted to prove his place, this report was enough to establish that he had visited the tomb. Is he hiding from them? Even though Rain was his sister, something hadn't added up about why a man as seemingly omnipotent as Sunny spent his evenings outside of Noble's house and his days following around a teen. He had told Noble that no one could know about him for both their sakes. Knowledge was power, and the amount of information in the report would change the way the people understood the history of the Dream Realm. How much more did he know that wasn't included? A lot, Noble assumed. That would get the attention of some very powerful people, including the sovereigns. Is that why he wasn't concerned about Rain making enemies? Has he already gone against them? This report had the potential to illuminate but also aggravate the powers that ruled over humanity. Noble looked back at the note that accompanied the package. You know what to do, it said. A smart person who valued their own well-being would get rid of the file and pretend they never saw it. For whatever reason, Sunny didn't want to come into the waking world and submit it himself. Why should she stick out her neck when he wouldn't? On the other hand, a social climber might try to use the information to their advantage. Plenty of people would be interested in having this knowledge for themselves. But at heart, Noble was an academic. A report like the one in her possession shouldn't be hoarded. It needed to be shared, studied, and added to the compendium of human knowledge. It needed to be used for the betterment of humanity. So Sunny was right, Noble knew what to do. She needed to get the paper published. There was only one problem. This report needed to not be linked to her as the originator of the work. The longer she had it in her possession, the more likely someone would be to trace it back to her. If they did, Noble would face a lot of questions that she wouldn't be able to answer. It was good that she had installed protection in her classroom against prying eyes. She had had enough problems with seers in the past to know how troublesome their visions could be. With that in mind, Noble began to form her plan. Unwrapping the paper that was addressed to her, Noble stuffed it and the note back into her small storage memory before dismissing it. She would burn both papers later. Before that, she needed to get the exploration report on the tomb of Ariel into the right hands. And those hands were about to head to lunch. Hex checked his watch as he hurried through the compound. Lunch in the staff cafeteria had been delicious but longer than he wanted. He always preferred to have a few minutes of quiet before anyone else returned to catch up on any work that might have been sent to the archives while he was gone. Silent work was the best work, especially if it meant he could choose the best tasks for himself. Maybe I can check the final draft on that chain worm dissection before anyone else arrives, Hex hoped. Passing through the library, he waved at Ren, who was reading quietly behind the counter. She looked up at him. You are 3 minutes behind your usual schedule. You've only done that 3 times before in the 6 years you have worked here. Ah, yes, Hex rubbed the back of his neck. I spilled the ribs from the cafeteria on me and it took a little bit of time to get out the stain. The librarian nodded knowingly. Ah, that you have done weekly. 320 times due to holidays and that time you. Thank you, Ren. Hex's cheeks reddened. I'll be on my way before I'm 4 minutes behind schedule. That would be a first, the librarian agreed. Have a good afternoon. Relieved not to have his past traumas publicly announced, the archivist headed down into the bunker below the library. That was close. The artificially lit halls were empty of occupants. Even 5 minutes late for him was still a few minutes earlier than anyone else, as evidenced by the "out for lunch" sign that still hung on the archive's door. Fishing out his key, Hex prepared to open up the office and begin his afternoon. Oh, what's this? Before he could put the key in the hole and enter the code, his foot bumped against something on the ground. He picked up the neatly wrapped package and studied with a furrowed brow. Feels like a book. Archivist Hex. A lilting voice called after him. The young man turned at his name, pleasantly surprised by a beautiful master with her hair knotted in a bun. Professor Noble, the archivist welcomed her. Ren said you were down here. The professor smiled warmly as she approached. Indeed I am. I just got back from lunch. Dipping his head, Hex grimaced. Sorry for not shaking your hand. Mine are a little full at the moment. Shifting her satchel, Noble held out her arms. So they are, may I help? She took the rectangular object from his hand, allowing him to adjust his grip on his key. I find it interesting that a place so technical still has a mundane key as part of the entry process, the professor chuckled. Hex smirked. The combination of high and low tech makes the archives more secure. Speaking of secure, he looked at her meaningfully. Of course, Noble turned her back. Inserting the key, Hex placed his hand on a pad before entering a string of numbers. The new measures were secure, so secure that he almost missed a number and had to start over. When the door clicked, he released the breath he had been holding. Taking the sign off the door, he turned to welcome Noble inside. Sorry for the delay. Not at all, Noble shook her head. I should have come later, only I need to head back to Ravenheart shortly. Please come in, then, and I'll get my datapad up and running, Hex beckoned her. I'll take that back too. He held out his hand. What? Oh, of course. Noble handed the modest package back to the archivist. What is it? Hex shrugged. I don't know. It was sitting on the front door. He weighed the object in his hand. I think it may be a book. The professor tilted her head. Do you often get things on your doorstep? The archivist frowned. No, this would be a first. Sitting down at his desk, Hex powered up the system. Why was it taking so long? It seems my equipment is having trouble waking up. It will just be a few more moments. I understand about incooperative technology. Noble nodded slowly. I live in the dream realm full-time now. Hex winced. Of course. You must do a lot of reading then. I do. Noble agreed. Do you have any good texts to recommend? I'll let you know. The archivist's eyes traveled back to the book-shaped package. The more he thought about it, the odder it was. Who would hand-deliver something to the archive's door? He picked up the object and stared down at it. While we wait, I should look at this just to make sure it isn't urgent, he said as much for himself as the professor. Noble didn't object, so he pulled back the paper and tossed it in the bin. Thankfully it was a book like he believed in, not a bomb sent to the archives to destroy it, not that any bomb could do that. That didn't mean that the contents were any less shocking. He stared in disbelief as he read the cover. The exploration report on the tomb of Ariel. Did you say Ariel? Noble looked over the desk to read as well. Seems so. Hex opened the report to look over the pages. His eyes glistened. It's even better than I hoped. Look here. He pointed to the people who rode on swimming creatures and even slept on them. A world with no land. Was everyone like a nightwalker then? The young man's mind raced with all the possibilities. I would have to ask Saint Kai next time he visits Ravenheart unless the author says. Who wrote it? Smiling, Noble seemed as excited as he was about the discovery. It just says nobody. I guess they want to remain anonymous. Hex furrowed his brow. Why wouldn't the author want to claim the contribution points? He or she could buy a mansion with what this would earn from this first chapter alone. The government saints would be able to put this in the system themselves. So, maybe it was Lady Changing Star herself who wrote this. Hex mused. She is always wanting to help people. Maybe her father didn't want her to publish it, so she sent it without signing her name. If that's the case, then publishing it for the world to see would make me a hero of sorts. Noble furrowed her brow. Heroes often die for their cause, Hex. Please be careful. It was very kind of the professor to worry about him. Hex was touched by her concern. Don't worry, ma'am. I won't use my terminal. I have to do routine maintenance on the mainframe later, so I will put it directly in the database. If Lady Changing Star wants to remain anonymous, I won't give them a trail. Hex paused. It looks like you have it all figured out. I'm glad you know what to do. Noble nodded. Hex furrowed his brow. You won't tell anyone, will you? My lips are sealed. Noble ran 2 fingers across her lips and twisted them like a key. You can count on me. Thank you. Hex placed his hand on his chest. Even if they trace it back to me, I have no proof of authorship, so what can they do? Suddenly Hex was very glad to have a witness for his discovery. No one would discount Noble's testimony if an inquiry was opened. That was great luck. Hex's datapad sounded that it was ready to go. Ah, finally. Now, Professor, what can I do for you? Noble shifted and pulled out her communicator. I wanted to check on the status of an article one submitted last month. I cannot find it. Noble brought out her copy of the article for Hex to search. A few keystrokes later, the archivist clicked his tongue. Seems like a glitch. I'll push it through manually. If you don't see it on your end in the next hour, come back and we will find a workaround. I'll check tomorrow. I really must be going. Noble took back her device and tucked it away. Goodbye, Hex. And good luck. Left alone, the archivist gripped the report with both hands. He had never been more excited in his life. This could be the find of the century. It was only a shame that no one would know he made the discovery. No one but Professor Noble, that was. And something told him she was very good at keeping secrets. Covering outside of the report with synthetic paper, Hex settled down in a meal of information. And wow, was it a feast. Noble left the archives with a ridiculous smile on her face. Her plan had gone even more smoothly than she had hoped. Hex had made assumptions without her having to lie and had come up with a plan with minimal input from her. Noble would have loved to have left the papers on the archive's doorstep like an abandoned child and hoped for the best, but she had decided to see it through for two reasons. First, she had said she would handle it. Even though she hadn't asked for it, Noble had been entrusted with something valuable. Leaving it behind and hoping for the best seemed irresponsible. The second reason was the archivist, Hex. Noble needed to make sure he understood the gravity of the situation. The professor would have felt terrible if she had caused the young archivist trouble when she could have helped to avoid it. Fortunately, he was reasonable and saw the value in anonymity. But, just to be safe, she wished him well. Her essence flowed strangely, indicating that her Kingdom Keeper attribute was at work once again. That put her mind at ease. I'm probably overreacting anyway. It's just a report. Maybe Hex and I will be the only ones who care. I could be making a mountain out of a speck of dust. The academic community gained hundreds of contributions daily, sometimes even into the thousands now that so many additional people had awakened in Antarctica. It was possible this little report would fall through the cracks and be given no credence, especially since the author would not identify themselves. All of her angst was for nothing. In a week or two, I will all but have forgotten that this even happened. Blowing out her cheeks, Noble pulled on her tether and returned to the Jade Palace. As much as Noble wanted to stick around and see the report be added to the database, she had other commitments. It was time to get on with her day. Who knows? Hex might delay the release to further distance himself from the report. I'll check in the morning. Most likely, everything will be fine. This is not fine. Noble stared at her communicator, her face growing pale. How did this happen? Having awoken bright and early in Ravenheart, Noble had made breakfast for her family and then headed to the academy. She still had a ton of work to do and there was her meeting with the government too. It was going to be a jam-packed day. A day that came to a screeching halt the moment she picked up her communicator and looked at the news. The top story was from none other than Frey. Tomb of Ariel, the surprise revelations that nobody knows. Not only had the Nonsensefree reporter found the entry in the database, he had stayed up all night reading it and making an article of his own. And if he had picked up on the report. Noble scrolled down the news column. Oh, spell. Every major news source had an announcement about the report on the tomb and its mysterious author. But that wasn't the worst part. Just as Noble was reaching the bottom of the articles, the page refreshed with an official statement by Clan Valor. We question the validity of a report by an unknown author. Neither Lady Changing Star nor any of those with her lay claim to this piece of literature. We ask that the author come forward and identify themselves immediately. Compensation will be awarded to anyone who can provide information that might shed some light on who this nobody might be. They are hunting him. The professor mumbled to herself. Her hunch, it seemed, had been correct. If the account was false, then Valor would have ignored it and let people think what they wanted. Their offering of a reward meant that the person who wrote about the Tomb of Ariel was worth finding. If Sunny wasn't a fugitive before, he was now. Because a great clan had come out so publicly, Noble doubted very much that they would let the author of the article go with just a slap on the wrist. Who is being hunted? Noble jumped as B2's voice emanated from her alcove. Someone who survived the tomb of Ariel. The professor explained. Coming out from the alcove, B2 joined the master at her desk. I had noticed a drastic upswing in the mention of that place in the media overnight. Are you concerned for the person being hunted? The android asked with a human-like tilt of the head. Noble pursed her lips. No, I suppose not. Why should I be? The professor was the only link back to the mysterious saint hiding in her daughter's shadow. Outing him would be admitting her own part in revealing the information. And she wasn't about to bring that heat on herself. I don't know. B2 shrugged. It's not like you are the one who went to the tomb. If I had, you would be calling me Saint Noble. The professor shook her head. Alas, I'm still a master. B2 reached forward, pulling the golden bracelets from her wrists before she even registered what was happening. What are you doing? Noble demanded of her assistant. The android whirred softly as a light passed over Noble's thin frame. Yes, still a master, B2 confirmed. How did you do that? Noble's mouth dropped open. I acquired an upgrade after that awakened tried to pass himself off as a sleeper and disabled me. I won't be caught unaware again. The android's eyes glowed red before returning to normal. I didn't install any upgrade like that. Noble furrowed her brow. I never said you did. B2 nodded. When you say, acquired, do you mean? Noble felt alloy fingers press up against her lips. It's better if you don't ask questions that you don't want the answers to. You know what? You're right. Ignorance is bliss, Noble decided. Then you might not like knowing that Clan Song has just issued a similar reward for information about this nobody. Noble tilted up her chin. I don't care. It doesn't concern me. So you've said before, but your eyes have twitched both times. Isn't that an indication that people might be telling falsehoods? Sometimes, Noble felt her eyes begin to swirl. Then if that is the case, you do care about this nobody and what happens to them. The assistant reasoned. If you say so. The professor did not feel like arguing. It makes some sense that you would care. You care for almost everyone. It is out of character for you to deny it. The android began to pace as it worked out the puzzle. The only reason people tell lies is to avoid telling the truth. What are you avoiding, Professor Noble? Pinching the bridge of her nose, Noble shut her eyes. Perhaps I was trying to avoid having this exact conversation with you. That actually makes sense. The android stored the information, but if that is the case, then why? B2, I have a lot of work to do. Please check the memory chamber. I anticipate at least a few explosions in our upcoming class. The android placed its hands on its alloy hips. And if there aren't, Noble leveled her gaze at the sassy assistant. Then I'll make some. In the end, 3 semi-destructive memories were enough to quell the frustration Noble was feeling. The last one, an object which resembled a tent stake but would explode after it was drilled into something solid, was particularly satisfying to see. Nothing like a little controlled mayhem to clear the mind. Noble thought to herself. But her good mood plummeted as soon as she got on the afternoon train toward government headquarters. Every communicator and datapad was fixed on one thing. Every conversation was centered around one person. All right, if you are so smart, who do you think nobody is, Cinder? Noble scooted away from the 4 people sharing her train car and tried to find anything out the window to distract her. Yet the words continued to assault her ears. Clearly, it is a reference to Odysseus. Who? You know that ancient myth about the guy who traveled and encountered the gods. What are you saying? You think the author of the article is some ancient god? What? No. They are well read though. They would have to be a scholar to publish something so detailed. None of you answered who you think this person is. Who would risk making the great clans angry for a paper? Maybe one of the first generation is sharing their findings before they die. No offense, but who cares about some ancient tomb? The clans do. I would say who cares about the clans, but then I'd end up a nobody too. That wouldn't be the end of the world. Hey, as long as it isn't some mongrel trying to become a legacy. You are just jealous, Finn. Liko's right. And if the person who wrote it is a saint, I wouldn't recommend calling them a mongrel or any other name. They might hear you. Things went silent as the four people looked around for some invisible being. At last, the final person spoke with a voice so soft that the sound of the tracks almost overpowered it. Guys, I had a thought. What if this nobody can't actually be remembered? Like, they chose the name because if they tell people who they are, then we won't remember the article or that this conversation even happened. They are literally nobody. The other three looked at their friend before bursting out in uncontrollable laughter. I didn't know you were a comedian, Toru. That's the funniest theory I have heard all day. Tell us, if nobody is real, is nothing real? Toru looked toward the ceiling with a pained expression. It was just a thought. Mercifully, the train doors opened and a new crowd of people flooded in, causing the conversation to take a less controversial turn. Noble's communicator buzzed. She looked down, happy for the distraction. Her meeting had moved locations. The new place was suspiciously close to Fort's old office. Curious. She would still have to drop off the papers from her husband and receive the new communications beforehand. Maybe she could ask about the change of venue during that time. Can you believe how fast this nobody became famous? A new passenger said to his companion. Open your eyes, Cordry. It's a conspiracy by the powers that be to take our eyes off of the real problem right under our noses. The woman beside him tapped her face gently. Cordry seemed just as confused as Noble. What problem? Cheese. There is a shortage and the cover-up goes all the way to the sovereigns, mark my words. The man regarded the lady with a pained smile. And here I thought you were going to say they were hiding something crazy like a war. Noble floated from her seat and headed toward the exit the moment the train stopped. Her head felt like it might explode. Were people always this nonsensical and she had just failed to notice? Or had living mostly in the dream realm without technology altered her thinking? If it's the latter, then I am glad my kids are no longer glued to a screen. I think even if I admitted the truth to these people, they wouldn't believe me. They like their theories more than facts. If her family had their communicators and data pads just now, they would be caught up in the madness like everyone else. At least in Ravenheart, they would be removed from the strange trend sweeping the NQSC. Even as Noble flashed her credentials at the gatehouse, she could see a copy of the article displayed on one of the monitors. Even you, praised. Noble kept her thought to herself. The truth will bring you home, sometimes faster than planned. Smiling brightly, praised waved the professor through. Noble found the gatekeeper's words comforting for once. Who wouldn't want to find their way home? Thank you, the professor took a deep breath as she continued into the facility. Even though nothing had physically happened to her, it had been an emotionally draining day. Home sounded nice, and in a few hours, Noble would be there with the people she loved most in the world. She would draw a large bath and forget about the waking world. Remaining in the dream world for a few days sounded heavenly. A family game night was well overdue, and maybe she and Fort could give the kids another cooking lesson using some of the newly arrived monster meat that was delivered by Sarai in their most recent care package. If Rain was going to move out soon as Fort predicted, then cooking skills were particularly important for a person living on their own. A girl could not live on bread alone, no matter how good Sarai's bread might be. Thoughts like these are what occupied Noble's mind as she passed her father's statue and blew him the customary kiss. It wasn't until she made it to the hall to exchange papers that Noble found the strength to concentrate on her task. The trading of papers was all but routine now, and so Noble was surprised when the government agent handed her the documents with a sad expression. I will miss seeing you. Give Ambassador Fort my good wishes. Are you leaving? The professor stored the papers, careful not to let the agent see the brown wrapping paper which was addressed to her from nobody. Reminding herself once again to dispose of the evidence, Noble dismissed the memory. Are you finally getting that well-deserved promotion? She asked to distract the man in case he had caught a glimpse of what he shouldn't see. The agent straightened his back. Wouldn't that be nice? I am not going anywhere. I was told this is your last day visiting our department because your replacement was ready for duty. My replacement? Noble scratched her head. She had asked to be relieved of this responsibility more than once. It seemed the government had finally listened but had failed to inform her. Yes, I believe that she is waiting for you upstairs to get any special instructions you may want to give. The agent held out his hand. So that's why the meeting was moved. Noble began to put the pieces together. Another item has been added to the agenda, or rather another person. Noble's communicator buzzed. They were ready for her upstairs. Bidding the agent farewell for the last time, Noble headed for the elevator. I wonder who they got to replace me. Surely it's someone already stationed in Ravenheart. I'm pretty sure it was implied that the agent is a woman. I wonder if I know her. In fact, Noble did. Noble blinked many times. She had felt the emotional signature, but it was only when her eyes fell on the woman that the professor truly processed what was happening. The dark-haired agent sat back in her spinning chair with a wide grin on her face. Her glasses were missing, but that only made her delighted expression more pronounced. Hey, Master Ma'am, Teddy, Noble stuttered. What are you doing here? More importantly, how are you here? I'm awakened now, Teddy announced proudly. Just ask Zeth. Sitting in the seat beside her, the familiar government clerk nodded. Awakened Teddy has recently completed her first nightmare and has been cleared to return to work. She will be the courier for Ambassador Fort from now on. Teddy sat up proudly in her seat at the mention of her new status. She was positively beaming. The boss mentioned how it would help you both out if someone took over delivering messages between the government and Ravenheart. I am happy to fill that role. Bringing her hand to her mouth, Noble took many seconds to formulate her words. Teddy, please tell me that you didn't take on a nightmare just because I was tired of running back and forth between the Awakened Academy and government headquarters. If the young woman had braved a nightmare in order to save Noble from a minor inconvenience like a train ride, the professor would feel terrible. I would love to say you were what inspired me to take on the first trial, but that would be a lie. The reason I did it is much simpler. The young lady leaned back in her chair. Noble looked at the other agent, but he averted his gaze. It seemed Zeth wasn't willing to explain on his coworker's behalf. The professor took a deep breath. And that simple reason is. Teddy clicked her tongue. What else? Sushi. Yeah, you are going to have to walk me through that. Noble rubbed her head. Don't get me wrong, I was very excited to go to Ravenheart with everyone, but last week I was seriously craving sushi. So I told Clan Song I was heading back to the waking world and they helped me out. After completing the nightmare, I was able to eat all the fishy goodness I wanted. Teddy pointed to the table. Sure enough, a small platter of rolled-up rice was there for her to snack on. You want one? She offered happily. Noble held up her palm. No, thank you. Teddy, are you telling me that you went through a hellish experience that could have killed you just to satisfy a food craving? Well, I also missed my spinning chair. Teddy patted the seat under her. Noble coughed. That is, unconventional. I think the word you were looking for is crazy, Zeth mumbled, scratching his nose. Worth it, Teddy spun once to prove her point. Noble raised an eyebrow at the younger woman. I hate to be the one to point this out, but couldn't you have just made a special request to have your chair and some sushi sent to Ravenheart? Teddy knit her eyebrows and waved her hand. Nah, that's too much work. Noble tilted her head. Had she heard correctly? Conquering a nightmare is more work than asking for your chair. Well, yeah. The government definitely involves people, but a nightmare only maybe involves people. The young lady spun in the opposite direction, her hair fanning out like a peacock's feathers behind her. But you asked Clan Song for help to begin your nightmare, the other agent noted, hoping to finally make her see the flaw in her logic. Teddy grinned mischievously. Well, yeah, but I like those people. You don't like me. Noble felt tears form in the corners of her eyes. She knew that she shouldn't care, but the little jab hurt more than she cared to admit. Of course I love you. Teddy placed her hand on her heart, but I can't eat you or sit on you, that would be wrong, or so I'm told. I see. Noble didn't, but what else could she say? By the way, I owe you a thank you. Your training really helped me out. The young woman pumped her fist. My training. The professor had not seen the young lady at any of her sessions in the Dreamer Academy. Well, that wasn't exactly true. Teddy had come with Fort once on government business and had watched a sparring match, but that hardly constituted a well-rounded education. Yeah, I've practically memorized every one of Queen Bee's moves. It was nice to try out a couple and see how they work. I can't say that I executed them perfectly, but I did all right. The young lady buffed her nails on her cardigan and continued. Maybe I should join the Dreamscape now. Do you know anyone who might be selling their pod? She conquered a nightmare after only watching others fight. Every legacy in existence would have a meltdown if they knew. While it was possible to complete some nightmares without violence, those opportunities were few and far between. I will let you know if I hear of anyone getting rid of their pod, Noble said, unwilling to part with her own Dreamscape access just yet. And I am happy I could be helpful to you. Congratulations on completing your first trial. Are you going to attend the Awakened Academy before the solstice? The young woman thought for a moment. It's not a bad idea, maybe I will give it a shot when I have time. Though I am not sure anyone can help me with my aspect there. The academy is designed to help with any aspect. What is so unique about yours that makes you think we won't be able to assist you? Did I forget to tell you? I'm a disease maker. A what? Both of the others unconsciously moved away from the young woman as she popped a bite of sushi in her mouth. What do you mean? You can make people sick. Noble pictured some long-extinct pathogen spreading across the dream realm unchecked. Okay, that sounded dramatic. I'm more of a disease manipulator. I can only control what is already there. Think like Beastmaster but on a smaller scale. Teddy tilted up her chin proudly. Do you want a demonstration? No. I mean as generous as the offer is, no thank you. Noble's smile tightened. Are you sure? Teddy pouted. I would have just given you something your body could easily fight off. Maybe a cold or a simple case of the sniffles. That's very generous of you, the professor pulled at her collar. Maybe some other time. Wait, if you can cause disease to spread, can you also cure it? I probably could, but where's the fun in that? Teddy shrugged. Noble wanted to argue that she could save countless lives and eradicate germs from the waking world. She wanted to say that a talent like that would be worth countless credits, possibly making her one of the richest awakened in two worlds. The professor wanted to let Teddy know that being a healer was probably one of the most valued positions that an awakened could have. But one look at Teddy's bright eyes told Noble that she would be wasting her breath. No fun, I suppose. Just more work. And speaking of work, we should get on with ours. Work. Oh yes, that. Tell me everything I need to know. Unless all I need to know is how to pick up and drop off papers, I've been doing that for years. Teddy beamed. She was right. Teddy was quirky but she was very good at making sure her work was completed. Noble knew that she would do a good job. It is mostly delivering papers, yes. I have a memory that I use to ensure the documents get back and forth from the dream realm without issue. I can transfer it to you. Noble paused. The note from Sunny and the report's original wrapping were still in there. After I give Fort the papers from today. Teddy took another bite, talking around her food. I don't need it. I got a memory in the nightmare that will work for bringing things back and forth to the boss man, even if it is a little unconventional. What in two worlds qualifies as unconventional for her? Noble was afraid to ask. That's good. You should work out with Fort the delivery times. He would know better than I do what he needs. I can't wait to tell him I'm awakened. He will be so surprised. Teddy's eyes glistened with anticipation. You didn't tell him you were going. Fort must be worried sick. Noble could imagine how much her husband would be concerned for his assistant. He had felt personally responsible for her since she came to Ravenheart and checked on her often. Teddy waved off her concern. He should be fine. I told him I was taking some personal days. I just didn't explain that it was for sushi. Sighing, Noble tried to get the conversation back on track. I will inform him of the developments when I get home. Please come by for a meal before Monday so we can iron out the details. Will you be having sushi? The new courier asked. Noble frowned. Fish, even the synthetic kind, wasn't exactly her favorite. Probably not. Tapping her chin, Teddy hummed softly. That's okay. I'll bring my own. I can do that now. Yes, Yes you can. Noble turned her attention to Zeth, who was taking in the whole scene with mild amusement. I should be on my way soon. Do you have the contracts? Zeth's jovial expression faded. Ah, yes I do. I have some good news. Clan Song came down on the price for the land. I don't understand why they should charge at all. They don't own the Dream Realm, do they? Teddy rested her chin on her palm. When in the Song domain, we should do as their sovereign asks. Zeth shrugged. Queen Ki Song was protecting the people of Ravenheart and beyond from the influence of the spell. Angering her or those under her was not only unwise, it was dangerous. The clerk pulled up the paperwork on his datapad and began going over the details. I have already secured the signatures of the necessary members of the Song clan and the government. You will be allotted this portion of land. Here are the boundaries and the expectations for how the land will be used. Zeth pulled out the schematics that Noble and a few others had made. Referencing the buildings and their placement, he pointed out the parameters that were agreed upon by both parties. Will I get a copy of this? Noble knew better than to trust her sense of direction, especially when it came to permanent construction. Once you sign your portion, I will print all of this for you to take with you, Zeth confirmed. What a relief. Not sure even my clarity would have been enough to get me through. They continued through the document with the third member of the group looking on. Once she finished her food, the young woman got on her datapad to take notes. Or at least that is what Noble assumed the young woman was doing. With Teddy, one could never be sure. Finally, they reached the section on funding. I guess the Chancellor signed off on my offer, Noble smiled. Zeth was confused by her words. It was Director Luna of the Eastern Quadrant who has been the champion of your cause. She picked up on the project almost immediately and has been watching it closely to make sure things run smoothly. Director Luna. Noble remembered the lady that she had first seen on the screen at the Awakened Academy on that fateful day that the Sovereigns appeared. Luna had been present via video conference in the preliminary meetings, but the director had only seemed passingly interested. I guess I am not a good reader of emotions when I can't feel them myself. Zeth nodded. The director loves what you are doing, and from what I have seen, she is pushing for a similar model to be built inside Bastion. Director Luna is the one who redistributed funding for you to get the desired location. She is a kind person and a very hard worker. Zeth pressed his lips together. Noble smiled softly. Don't worry. I will not take her faith or kindness for granted. I will pay back what is owed. Exactly how much will I owe for this little slice of Dream Realm? Zeth adjusted his collar. The final figure is right. A knock at the door cut him off before he finished his statement. We're busy, Teddy called to the interloper. Yet the door still opened. A man with a long nose peeked in. There you are, Teddy. Here I am, but why are you here? Teddy scrunched her face. We are a little busy just now. Zeth tried not to sound as annoyed as he felt. I understand, but I also know how much Teddy hates surprises, so I came to find her and let her know. The man shrugged. Let me know what? The plucky awakened looked perturbed for the first time since the meeting began. Saint Kai is coming down the hall. He's asking everyone the same set of bizarre questions about nobody. Seems like some weird quirk to me. Anyway, I wanted to give you a heads up in case he came by here. Nightingale is looking for nobody. Here. Teddy looked excitedly at Zeth. Whoever that is, the long-nosed man was confused by her enthusiasm. Have you been living under a rock today? Even Noble has heard of nobody. Haven't you? Teddy tilted her head at the professor. Noble simply nodded. Well, I was able to answer honestly that I didn't know anything, so he moved on quickly. I can see I'm not appreciated here, so I'll get back to work. The door shut. Saint Kai thinks that this nobody is here. Zeth scratched his chin contemplatively. This is the best day ever. Teddy clapped her hands. I hate to put a damper on the enthusiasm, but we still have work to finish. Let me sign the papers and I'll get out of your way. Noble barely held her neutral smile. Zeth frowned. But we haven't talked about. I can look over the last bit later. The professor spun her fingers in the air to get him to hurry. When he did not immediately comply, she scrolled down and added her name on the appropriate line. If that is all, Noble rose with a glance to the hall. She was running out of time. It all looks in order. Let me print it out for you to take with you. Zeth clicked and the machine in one corner whirred to life. The first line was printed and then the second. Come on, come on, come on. Each synthetic page looked like it might take an eternity to print. Was this thing made in the Dark Ages? Noble willed the papers to come faster, but the ink continued its steady stream without paying her any mind. The final page began to spit out the signatures so that the professor could be on her way. Alas, it was too late. Noble gritted her teeth as another knock at the door precipitated two men entering. The professor didn't need to look to know one of them was a familiar saint. She turned slowly to see Nightingale with an army lieutenant in full uniform. The mundane soldier's face was grim. Excuse the disturbance. We have urgent official business, he said, sounding anything but rushed. How many other doors had he knocked on before arriving here? May we ask what this is about? Zeth stood, politely motioning them into the room. The lieutenant folded his hands in front of him. Saint Nightingale has some questions for Master Noble. Kai's winning smile flashed in her direction. Thankfully, there were no crazed teens to see it. Noble met his gaze as calmly as she could. Saint Nightingale, I am surprised you remember me. Why wouldn't I? My visit to your academy was quite memorable. The charming saint nodded. Noble was not sure if the impression had been good or bad. After all, it had involved Rain getting a head wound and Kai needing to step in to give an archery demonstration. Thank you again for your help that day. I'm here on academy business, actually. Noble's eyes flicked toward the synthetic pages that had just finished printing. Ah, I understand. I am here on business too. I don't want to waste anyone's time, so I will get on with it. Kai sighed, wishing for a happier topic of discussion than what was about to occur. We are here in search of any information on the mysterious nobody who published the report on the tomb of Ariel. I don't mean to sound rude, but isn't that below your pay grade? Teddy pulled her lips to one side. I mean I am not complaining, but you really should. Kai viewed her with a complicated expression. Well, the great clans have demanded an explanation. Because the publication happened in the waking world, they expect the government to be the one to provide those answers. Having visited the tomb of Ariel myself, I volunteered to conduct the investigation. Noble noted that Kai had left out one key qualification as to why he had likely been approached in the first place. Everyone in the government who was paying attention knew that he could tell when people were lying. And that was a huge problem because, on this particular matter, Noble had plenty to hide. She eyed the door, but it may as well have been 1,000 kilometers away as a few meters. If she tried to leave now, that would be suspicious. Under normal circumstances, Noble would have been hanging on every word and learning as much as she could about the strange situation. The professor needed to sit tight and look interested. Perhaps then she would not need to be questioned. That was the best-case scenario at this point. Please only talk to the government agents. Noble pleaded silently. The lieutenant only has a couple of questions, and then we can let you get back to work. Kai motioned for the soldier to continue. Who wants to go first? I will, Zeth volunteered gallantly. And you are? Zeth, I am one of the clerks here. The young man nodded as his curly hair bounced around his head. Thank you. The soldier looked through his list and clicked on the man's name. Please answer all questions with a complete sentence. When did you first hear about the report on the tomb of Ariel? I first learned about it this morning when I was having my breakfast. Zeth seemed to recall the moment as he spoke. And do you have any idea who this mysterious nobody might be? I do not. The clerk held the other man's gaze. The lieutenant waited a moment before cutting his eyes toward Nightingale. He's clear, Kai confirmed. Marking down the information, the soldier moved on to the younger of the two women. And your name, ma'am? I'm Awakened Teddy. When did you first hear about the report on the tomb of Ariel? The man's voice was almost robotic. I was one of the first to know. Teddy announced proudly. Oh, do you have any idea of who this mysterious nobody might be? Of course I do. I know exactly who it is. The young woman spread her arms wide as if expecting a hug. Who? Everyone in the room leaned in to hear. Even Noble was fascinated by the declaration. Isn't it obvious? It has to be that Master Celio. He completed the third nightmare, and Changing Star and the others are protecting him from being discovered. Master Celio. Kai furrowed his brow. Well, he would be Saint Celio now, but yes. I don't know why you are trying to deny it. If this were a genuine search, you would be looking at the archives where the article would have been uploaded instead of poking around here. Teddy crossed her arms. While Teddy had come to the wrong conclusion, some of her reasoning was sound. Why hadn't they gone to the archives? No, what am I thinking? I don't want them to do that. Make a note to check on the Celio fellow, Kai told the man with him. And we have visited the archives, but no one there was able to give us any information on who nobody might be. The head of the archives couldn't even tell us how the article made it into the system. Noble breathed a small sigh of relief. At least for now, Hex was safe. He had covered his tracks well. We will follow up with any additional questions, the soldier told Teddy before turning to Noble. Name. Oh, I don't work here. I doubt you will find me on whatever list you are using. However, Noble's excuse only succeeded in frustrating the investigator. Name. The man repeated. You know it is Master Noble. The professor hid her nervousness behind the gruff answer. Her heart beat wildly in her chest. Surely everyone could hear it. When did you first hear about the report on the tomb of Ariel? Taking a measured breath, Noble knew she must be honest. I was one of the first to know about this report. I was second after the one who wrote it. Do you have any idea of who this mysterious nobody might be? The soldier squinted at her, and Noble could feel sweat form on her brow. She wished that she had left without the papers for the school. Or even excused herself to go to the bathroom. Why hadn't she thought of that sooner? Instead, she would have to answer. I think I like Teddy's theory the best of any I have heard. And I know this Celio fellow. He is the type to jump headlong into a nightmare without a lot of thought. With the government's permission, I could introduce you. Thank you, but that won't be necessary just now. Kai motioned to the soldier. We should be going. Thank you all for your time. We will contact you if we have any follow-up questions. You can visit any time, Teddy called after him. She winked at Noble. He'll be back. I am sure you will find a way to bump into him again. As for me, I have to use the restroom. Noble called on her storage memory and stuffed her papers inside with the other documents. I will see you both later. Teddy pointed to the door. The closest facility is down the hall into the. But the master was already gone. Or you can use the dream realm, that works too, I guess. Noble nearly collapsed against the gateway. It was good that she didn't need her legs to stand because her knees were shaking. That was too close. As she took slow, deep breaths, Noble tried to calm herself. What just happened? Miraculously, she had been questioned about an investigation and remained unscathed. Being caught by Saint Kai would have landed her in more trouble than she wanted to think about. Yet, think about it, she did. If she had admitted to knowing Sunny, the government would have demanded to meet him. The mysterious saint would have been forced to flee or be discovered, leaving Rain alone, possibly forever. Rain might never forgive me for chasing off her guardian. And if she realizes he is telling the truth about being her brother, I doubt she would ever want to speak to me again. Not that Noble would be around to know. If the government found out, the great clans would not be far behind. If they couldn't hunt the author, then they would hunt the only link to the author, me. There were very few places in the dream realm outside of the sovereign's reach, and none of them were places that her family could go. It felt dramatic to believe that one single question could have undone her life so easily, but Noble had to admit that she had brushed too close with disaster. Much too close. Thankfully it didn't come to that. When the moment of truth came, Noble did the only thing she could lie. Or rather, she avoided the truth. Lying outright would have been discovered by the handsome archer who could detect falsehoods. So, Noble had answered the question which she wished they had asked instead. Which theory about nobody do you like the best? Hearing Teddy blame Nick was amusing. The young woman wasn't wrong. The librarian would enter a seat unnoticed if given the opportunity. And technically Nick had helped Noble with one of her articles anonymously without taking any credit. The pieces of the puzzle almost fit. Yes, the professor liked this theory very much. In this context, Noble's words had been truthful, if a bit misleading. But there had been more than just words with her deception. When answering, she had sent the saint and soldier a sense of calm and goodwill. Kai couldn't sense emotions like Noble could, and the foreign influence was accepted by both parties without any resistance. If the saint had guessed her deception, he didn't show it. And he didn't press the matter. If anything, his eyes clouded over as if he remembered something only to forget it again. The distraction had been enough to put Kai off of her scent. For that, Noble was grateful. If either of the men had repeated the question and forced her to answer, things would have ended very differently. While she was still recovering, an awakened appeared next to her by the gateway, another citizen of Ravenheart returning from the waking world. And Noble could already see the question on his lips. Quite a day in the waking world, did you hear about? But Noble didn't wait to chat. She hurried down the steps and toward the icy bridge. The professor didn't stop or talk to anyone until she was safely inside her home. She pressed her face against the doorframe. Safe. A small part of her had expected soldiers to be waiting for her. That Kai had only let her go to see if she would lead them back to the mysterious author of the groundbreaking report. In a way she had. From what Noble could feel, Rain was still upstairs, hopefully resting and recovering. If that were the case, the man who usually lived in her shadow was outside somewhere. But Noble had no intention of talking to him anytime soon. Not until the heat was off, if that ever happened. Surely things would die down soon. They had to. She just needed to keep her cool until then. Typical me, always finding trouble, Noble berated herself silently. Why hadn't she ignored the package yesterday morning and come back inside? Or once she had opened it, she could have refused the mission that she had never asked for. She had many chances to put down the mantle of responsibility and walk away. But deep down, even knowing the current danger, Noble knew she would have made the same decision. I'm not sorry. It is the great clans who should be sorry for holding back information that should be shared. Nothing in it was spoken against them or any of their members. It was just an informational brief. When looked at from that perspective, Noble felt a burning in her chest. The clans were very powerful, but they didn't always have humanity's best interests at heart. This time they were wrong. That didn't mean that Noble would brazenly tell them so. She would keep her mouth shut on the matter at all costs. But she also shouldn't feel any shame for letting the world know more about the tomb of Ariel. Her conscience on that matter was clear. Noble sighed. A few days in the dream realm will do me good. Here there is no technology, and news is only sent by word of mouth and the bulletin boards by the community wells. She craved time with her family where the only wild theories she would hear would be the twins' guesses about what creature the monster meat at the market might have come from. That was a line of inquiry Noble was more than happy to participate in. A patter of feet on the stairs let Noble know that her presence had been noticed. Pushing off of the door, she plastered a smile on her face. It was now the weekend and she was home. Hello, Mom. We have been very good today. We took care of Rain just like you said. Any complaints she may or may not have are purely her concussion talking. Brock explained preemptively. I see. Noble eyed him carefully before offering the teen who was almost taller than her a hug. Where's your brother? Right here, Mom. Did you know that you're home 57 minutes early? Blaze exclaimed as he bounded down the final step. That's an oddly specific amount of time. Noble looked at her youngest, confused by his assertion. How did you know that? Moving to Ravenheart had warped all of their senses of time. Now instead of marking hours and seconds by the bright numbers on their communicators, they used the sounding of horns through the upper town to mark their daily routines. Simple. Look. Blaze pointed with a grin. Following the boy's finger, Noble looked at the wall and her eyes grew wide. She leaned closer for a better look at the strange anomaly that had not been there that morning. On the wall was a fully functioning clock. Where did this come from? Noble touched the wood, unwilling to believe her own eyes. It was a gift, Brock answered before his brother could, earning a dirty look from the younger twin. Noble frowned. This was the second item that had appeared around her home in 2 days. The last one had nearly gotten her in deep trouble with the great clans. Unaware of his mother's concern, Blaze eagerly hurried to show off their new accessory. He took hold of the large pinecone shape hanging from the bottom. If you think that is neat, wait until you see what happens when I do this. Blaze pulled on the weight. The chain whizzed downward as the counterweight flew up in equal measure. A soft click sounded. Don't move. Noble placed her hand over her son's as she examined the device. Relax, Mom. I just set the clock to run for another week. What? Did you think it was going to explode? Blaze laughed as he pulled his hand away. That was exactly the thought that entered Noble's head. A mysterious contraption entering her home while she was gone was suspicious, to say the least. How was it running? There was no electricity in the dream realm. Taking a closer look at the swinging pendulum, Noble realized it wasn't using electricity at all. The antique wood looked like it was left over from before the Dark Ages. Maybe it was. The march toward bringing electricity to Ravenheart was making slow but consistent strides, but they weren't going to be having electric lights just yet. The steady ticking of time was kept by gravity's pull on the weights and pendulum as well as many tiny gears. The mechanics of the machine were simple enough that the dream realm did not interfere. Fascinating. Now that she was relatively sure that the clock wasn't rigged to explode, she turned to her other concern. Where did that come from? When Noble had left that morning, the wall had been bare. Auntie Sarai brought it by a while ago when she came to check on me. Rain came down the stairs stretching out her sore muscles. The girl looked much better than she had 2 days ago. Based on the way that Rain was rolling her shoulder, she was feeling significantly better too. Sarai also brought by some lunch. I figured you ordered both the clock and the food, so I just thanked her. I see. Noble was relieved that the gift had come from a known source. Had it been anyone else, the professor would have been very suspicious about the timing. The professor had paid for lunch for her children, but the twins were supposed to pick it up. Either they had forgotten or Sarai had come by with the meal before they planned to leave. I'll have to thank her also. Noble turned toward the entrance, letting her children know that the final member of their family was about to arrive. I thought that was you. Fort burst in the door with a spring in his step. How is the most sensational woman in 2 worlds? Better now that you are home. Noble hugged her husband, breathing in his scent. How something so simple as the smell of the person she loved most in the world could settle her soul was even more magical than her powers. Fort held her tightly as he looked at his children, who shrugged. What's that? The ambassador asked when Noble finally let go. Sarai brought it over. The professor accepted the man's kiss on the cheek as she turned her head to look. I don't suppose you know something about it, do you? Me? No. I just admired the one she was setting up in the bakery yesterday at lunch. I guess she took that as a hint. I'm not complaining. I got you home 55 minutes early. Fort squinted at the clock. 57. Blaze corrected with a wide grin. Haha, very funny you two. Noble nudged her husband with her shoulder. Fort furrowed his brow. Is everything all right? Normally I would get at least an eye roll for that kind of comment. It was just a long day. Thankfully I only have one more thing to do before my work is complete. Noble summoned her storage memory. Taking the academy contracts and setting them on the table, Noble passed the sealed envelope underneath to her husband. Here are your papers. I won't be delivering them anymore. You'll never guess who will be. Who? Fort opened the envelope and slipped out the pages inside. Teddy. The lines forming on the ambassador's face relieved some of the tension in Noble's body. That's right. She became an awakened because she was craving sushi. I'm sorry, what? Fort scanned the page, getting no more clarity about the strange situation. You'll just have to ask her when she comes for dinner this weekend. My retelling of events would not do it justice. The professor laughed for the first time that day. Her duties were done and her family was around her. The world outside might be crazy, but the one inside this cottage was perfect. What's that? Brock peeked into the memory and spied the brown paper crushed in the bottom. Is it a note from Grandma? No, I didn't see Grandpa Julius today. I found that paper on my way out yesterday and keep forgetting to throw it away. Noble felt strangely calm about her son seeing the page. She picked up the paper and string to wad them up. Rain's emotions spiked. The teen must have recognized the page. Had she been the one to get it for her mysterious guardian? I'll take care of it, Mom. Rain took the brown ball from her mother's hand. It will be a good start to the fire for dinner. She shoved it into the wood-burning stove and watched the fire crackle to life. Within a moment, the paper and its string were consumed, pressed down by a log of wood that Rain placed on top. The note hidden inside, too, turned to ash. With the paper, another of Noble's worries vanished. She had spent enough time worrying today and it hadn't done her a bit of good. It was time to focus on happier things. One of those happier things was sitting on the table. Fort, sweetheart, will you clear the table and I'll start working on an early dinner? Noble winked at her husband, who tilted his head to one side but complied. He stopped to look at the pages before placing them on top of the packet in his hands. Fort's eyes went wide. Is this what I think it is? Fort read down the page. You got permission to build the school. Did you doubt me? Noble raised one eyebrow. Never, but I am still impressed. The man set down the papers and caught his wife up in a hug. We should celebrate. How? Noble didn't think getting government papers signed warranted a party. Let's go out for dinner. I heard a place in town got a shipment of orange meat from our favorite food supplier. The ambassador paused. That is, if you are up for it. Fort looked at his daughter. I feel like I could go on another hunt right now. Rain watched her father flinch. But I won't, Dad. Not for a while at least. Good. Maybe by then, I will come to terms with it. Fort reached out and squeezed his daughter's hand. It's settled then. Everyone get on your shoes. The mad rush for shoes and coats finally ended with the family dumping into the street. Only Noble remained to make sure the stove wouldn't catch anything else on fire. After confirming the brown paper's remains were completely destroyed, she joined everyone else in the street. Noble looked in the direction of where the new school would be built. The sun broke through the clouds, making the snow glisten with extra brilliance in the distance. Monday, she would begin construction on what she hoped would be part of her legacy. Are you ready? Fort asked with a hopeful expression. Noble's smile grew. Yes, I am. Time both slowed to a crawl and went faster than Noble could measure. The search for nobody yielded no results, with each person laying their unique theory about the mysterious person aside when the next big story hit the news. Valor demanded the report be banned, but copies of it still circulated in less official capacities. Even Fort had obtained a printed version of the book, but he knew better than to flaunt the fact in public. Things settled into a natural rhythm for the family in Ravenheart. Days turned into months. Autumn came and was on the verge of leaving when early one morning Noble woke suddenly from a deep sleep. It was still strange not to choose when she woke after years of never resting, but she had to admit that her sleep was better when her soul wasn't traveling between worlds non-stop. Opening her eyes wide, Noble felt for her husband. The spot next to her was empty. Any sleepiness left in her vanished. Fort, she whispered into the lingering darkness. When no answer came, she summoned the loosened taper and climbed out of bed. She felt for Fort's emotional signature before activating her second sight to locate him. He was in the living room downstairs. Silently she slipped down the stairs to find him sitting on the sofa surrounded by pages and pages of work. One of the family's lamps flickered on the low table in front of him as he studied a page intently. Couldn't sleep, Noble whispered by his ear as she came up behind him. He jumped, dumping the stack from his lap. It floated back into his hands without a single sheet falling to the ground. Fort gave his wife a weary smile. I have been known to be a night owl. He looked at the clock on the wall, or an early bird in this case. He sighed. I had something on my mind, and I needed to work it out. Noble came to the front of the seating area as she took in the scene. May I help? I might not be good with physical puzzles, but I'm rather good at problem solving. From the feelings Fort was putting off, it wasn't something as simple as where to put the next town square. Clearing the seat next to him, Fort patted the cushion. You know that letter your mother sent for my eyes only the day before yesterday? I do. Noble brought letters back and forth at least twice a week. More than a few times, Lena had sent Fort a communication directly instead of waiting for the slower government channels. When Noble had gotten another sealed letter the day before, she hadn't thought anything of it, thinking it was something trivial like all the others. That assumption had been wrong. Fort pressed his mouth into a firm line. Mom noticed something strange about the highway plans between Bastion and the rest of the Sword domain. It must be very strange for her to reach out to you. Roads have never been an area of interest to her as far as I know. Unlike Noble and Fort, Lena had learned to drive before North America fell, but she hadn't done so in decades. The grandmother cared more about people and let others get her to the places she needed. Indeed. Fort chewed his lip as he searched through the pages of his notes. Finding the page from his mother-in-law, he held it out for the light of the now floating candle to illuminate. In one of their weekly government meetings, someone jokingly said, "All roads in Bastion lead to nowhere." It struck your mother as a strange thing to say, so she caught the man after the meeting and asked him what he meant. I take it that his joke had some merit to it or Mom wouldn't have written to you. Noble studied the page as she listened. The long-term roadways were revealed to the government so that they could more easily secure the supplies. When Lena looked at the plans, most of the paths are straightforward between citadels. Fort went silent, the thoughts in his head consuming his attention. Noble floated the candle in a circle to bring the man back. And the rest? That's the thing, they do exactly what the agent said. They lead nowhere. They are offshoots that abruptly ended all in the same direction. They all stopped just short of Godgrave. Fort pulled out a page with a rough sketch that Lena had provided. A huge skeleton was crudely drawn with Bastion marked out and a few other key points. Sure enough, nodes off of the main trade route snaked toward ancient bones before ending short of the giant. When your mom went to Clan Valor to ask about why the extra supplies were needed, the knight representative vaguely alluded to future plans to connect through Godgrave to the roads of the Moonriver Plain and beyond. He dismissed her concern about the place being a death zone and cut the interaction short with an excuse that he had other matters to attend to. Fort laid out the situation as he understood it. Mom usually has a good sense about these things. Noble chewed the inside of her cheek. I know. You both do, which is one of the reasons I am telling you all of this. The letter asked me to check on the road building plans in the Song domain to see if there was any credence to Valor's claims. The ambassador lowered Lena's note as he searched through mounds of paper. I spent the day searching through all of the infrastructure records that I had access to. Valor's plans may have been brief and to the point, but Clan Song buried all of their information in a mountain of paperwork. These pages are the copies that Song provided us of supply redirection requests and redistribution of assets. I am developing a bit of a headache wading through it, but I think I have finally pieced it together. In the dim light, the lines on Fort's forehead looked even more pronounced than usual. And Noble couldn't wait any longer for his assessment. The Song domain has roads planned that go from here to the coast to connect Key Song with all of her citadels. The ambassador nodded slowly. And, as expected, they also have mapped out roads toward Godgrave. Fort scratched his chin as he continued to search. But that's good news, isn't it? Noble was confused. If both sides were building roads toward each other, then that could only mean good things, right? If Godgrave stopped being a death zone, then perhaps someday she might be able to travel overland to visit her mother in person. That would be amazing. Yet Fort's emotions kept her from celebrating. It should be good news, the man conceded. There is just one big problem. Finding the page he needed, Fort brought it for Noble to see. Here are the roads that I could find from Song. Then he held out Lena's page a second time. And these are the roads proposed from Valor. Do you notice anything peculiar about them? Noble stared at both maps for a moment, unsure of what she should see. But then it hit her. Oh. Fort nodded. You see it too then. I was hoping I was crazy. No matter how I look at it, the problem remains. The roads can never connect. That begs the question, why build them? For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.